Good evening. Well, welcome to everyone here, large and small. We had a wonderful evening and had some great meeting tonight. Call on the meeting to order and ask our city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Budge?
Yeah.
Councilmember Terry?
Here.
Councilmember Gatewood?
Here.
Vice Mayor Sander?
Here.
Mayor McGarvey?
Here. Thank you. And if you call the city clerk to announce the meetings, video recording, and playback schedules, please.
The meeting of the Rancho Cordova City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air Thursday, April 4th at 6 p.m. and Sunday, April 7th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch. A copy can also be ordered from the City Clerk's Department, and a webcast of this meeting is also available on the city's website within 48 hours of adjournment of this meeting.
Thank you. We're now going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's going to be led by Mr. Peterson. And then we'll have a moment of silence. Our representative isn't here tonight, so after that, for the invocation, we'll have a moment of silence.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good, thank you. Well, we have a little bit of a change in our agenda. We have two presentations. The first is going to be item 9.1. It's a Riverview STEM robotics team. And have Maria, please.
On here. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Maria Niestad with the Communications and Public Affairs Department. I have the great honor today of presenting a small package of little treats for you in the form of some of our elementary school students. And I want to first introduce Mr. Tony Peterson. He is the principal at Riverview STEM, and he's going to introduce the team. They have some exciting news for you.
Good evening. Just a quick little history of what, obviously, Riverview started 5 years ago, and one of the programs is a robotics program that goes kindergarten through 5th grade. To expand that program, though, we were thankful that we had Intel, whose parents and every year have stepped up, and we've been maxing out the Intel donations. And then Measure H came along and provided huge support for the robotics program, purchasing laptops, specialized super kits so that students could get involved in competition. So we've had that perfect marriage between Rancho Cordova City and Intel and the school district. Without it, we just would not have this program. You can see some of the things that have been purchased with those funds. And I'm just the money man and the guy running around trying to coordinate and organize this stuff. But the Mrs. Lanich is our robotics instructor and teacher. So I'm going to introduce her and have her come up here. And then I want her to briefly talk about what Measure H and Intel funds have done for the summer program for free for kids.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here. I'm very thankful that Measure H supported our program. 3 years ago, we had a summer robotics camp open to any 4th or 5th grader at our school, and we just charged a small $10 to $15 materials fee, and they came in the morning for 2 weeks in a row to learn how to build robots and drive them. And we've gone from just learning just the basics to being able to have a competitive team this year, and it couldn't have happened without you. So really appreciate that. I'm going to introduce the children who are on the team, and 2 of them are going to explain their accomplishments for this year. So everybody on the teams, please stand. And I'm going to have Paviel come up and speak first.
You can actually put that podium down so they can see over it.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Paviel Aulick. I am a 5th grader at Riverview STEM Academy. My robotics team is Cyborg X, and my team consists of myself, my brother Paolo, Prabhat, and another boy, Nathan. He could not make it today. All of us are either going to Riverview right now or have previously gone. I am going to Riverview right now, and Paolo, Prabhat, and Nathan, they are all alumni from Riverview, and that's where we learned how to build robots and engineer them. Some of the accomplishments we've had is we entered several robotics tournaments, and then after that, we qualified for states. When we went to states, we made it to finals in states, and we won the tournament, the teamwork challenge of the tournament, which we then qualified for Worlds, and we will be going to Worlds in Kentucky at the end of April.
Goodness gracious.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Eliza Abramian. She's going to explain what the 5th graders have been doing this year.
Hi, my name is Eliza Abramian, and I am in the 5th grade, and I currently go to Riverview STEM Academy. The robotics team originally started from 2 teams, Team A and B. Team A made accomplishments of 3 awards. They had 2 design awards and 1 sportsmanship award, and they got those awards, and Team B got into the states, and we later on went into state finals, and the reason that Team B went into the states was because we did autonomous, and yeah.
So if you don't mind, the kids will do a little demonstration. I just want to add one more thing. We're really grateful to the leadership of Mr. Peterson. This is his last year. He's retiring this year. We're going to miss him a lot, but he did a lot for the school to get this program going, and hopefully will continue. Do you have a few more minutes?
We're
Two
going to
kids
pass an
wanna-
ordinance actually about his
Okay.
retirement, so that's.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to thank him publicly because he's very quiet and behind the scenes, but he really, without his leadership, this could have never happened, and it took a lot of doing, so appreciate.
And if we could have everybody come up here, Mr. Peterson, the kids, the teacher, everybody. We have a certificate of recognition from the city for all of you. The City of Rancho Cordova hereby honors Riverview STEM Academy robotics team in recognition of the excellence in STEM and robotics to the Rancho Cordova community. The Riverview STEM's team competed against over 400 teams in 3 tournaments in Davis, California, and won 2 design awards and a sportsmanship award. The team was invited to and competed in the state championship and placed 7th out of 11 teams in the competition. Members of the team are now going on to the World Championship. Congratulations to our amazing Riverview STEM robotics team. April 1, 2019, signed by the mayor, me too, and this day, and congratulations to all of you. You've been doing a fantastic job, and you're learning so much. That's what the STEM Academy is all about. Yay! Let's go through the picture now.
Photo with the robots.
Yes.
We're gonna have everybody come up here and get a picture of the group.
Bring your robots.
Bring the robot, Brianna.
Thank you.
I want you guys, 10 years, which one of you wants a job in Rancho? Who's staying in Rancho? Who wants to be near their parents in Rancho? Babysitting's on your parents.
Ooh, yeah.
There was just a quick question on autonomous, and that is, these kids, what you saw them doing with the remote control, the other half of it is they have to do that autonomously, so they code it, and it does it by itself. Anyways, so thank you very much. Without you guys in Intel, this would have never happened. Thanks.
He's putting on the shots.
Close it up and give it to me.
Very good. If you noticed, I have a rocket of my own. I was given by the kids. So it's, we'll see if it lasts up for the whole meeting, but I think it will. We'll see. And we've got presentation 9.2. That has something to do with a birthday, I think, around here. Somebody about Linda Budge? I think we've, yeah. So we're going to sing a happy birthday, and everybody is welcome to join us in on this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Linda. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
Speech.
Thank you all.
Oh, what a wonderful thing for the Riverview STEM Academy. Okay, on to public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council for any matter not on the agenda may do so at the time for completing and submitting a speaker card to the city clerk. For items on the agenda, speakers will be called up to the podium by the mayor at the point of the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers are encouraged to keep comments to 3 minutes or less and to state name and community of residence. Under the provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council is prohibited from discussing or taking immediate action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or the need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. We have any cards?
Yes, I have 2 public speaker cards. The first is Travis Kimball. If you'll come forward, you'll have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Following Travis will be Ray Wilson.
Hi, my name is Travis Kimball from the Rancho Cordova Heart Homeless Assistant Resource Team. And I just wanted to take a quick minute to thank City Council and staff for their support of the rotating homeless shelter this season and give a quick recap. We were able to provide temporary shelter this winter over the course of 9 weeks, up from 9 weeks, 11 weeks, up from 9 weeks last year. That was able to provide temporary shelter for 100 individuals. We averaged 22 guests each night, the majority either from Rancho Cordova or having spent the last 1 to 5 years in Rancho. This included veterans and several couples as well. Just wanted to also publicly thank, there were 10 churches involved who provided the facilities, as well as over 100 volunteers in total to provide dinner and shelter for the night for these individuals. And I just wanted to, again, thank everyone involved and say that we are looking forward to working together, not only to provide this as a temporary fix, really, for a homeless problem, but also more long-lasting solutions, including temporary or transitional housing for homeless in Rancho Cordova. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Go ahead.
Ray Wilson, if you'll come forward.
Ray Wilson, City of Rancho Cordova. I understand that it's illegal to park your vehicle on your lawn or off the driveway in the mud. I also find that Alcante Way, Alcante Way in Rancho Cordova, just north of Folsom Boulevard, the old part of town, has no sidewalk, curb, or gutter. And on Oakton Way, which the address I live is on Oakton Way, there are curb and gutters that are busted. Tree roots rooted them up. I believe the county used to call it trip. And the city said here a while back, a year or so ago, that they were going to take care of it, and they haven't. And some of them are really, really bad. If someone would to come out to my address, I would gladly show them where they are. The city did send someone out when this was first brought to their attention, and they said they'd take care of it. Well, they haven't. Speed bumps on Oakton Way. There was a petition put in over a year ago, and we never heard any response. On Oakton Way, I live on a corner. The road runs north to south and east to west. I live right on the corner. One night at 1:15 in the morning, I got head-on in my driveway. My neighbor, he lives on the other side of that turn. He got hit at, I don't know, early hours of the morning. They hit his boat and his boat trailer that was in the driveway, slammed it so hard it threw the boat and the trailer up on his house, totaled his four-wheel drive pickup. That house has been hit 4 times that I know of. This is the, I don't know, 3rd, 4th person that's lived in that house. If that pickup hadn't have been there, they'd have run right into the front of the house where their bedroom is. I certainly would like someone to contact me, and I could certainly show them what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Is it Albert out there? Tell him if you would.
Yes, I would like to ask you talk to Mr. Harriman. Steve Harriman's in the back of the room, and if you could please take the information. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have any more on public work on the cards?
Not for public comment, no.
Okay. Anyone else haven't turned in a card? All right, thank you. On to the council reports. Donald Terry.
So last week was the Air District meeting. The first thing is, as of the end of this month, the Check Before You Burn initiative is off as of the end of March, but now starts watching the index to see if there's healthy air. And luckily, it's at the exact same place. So if you have the app already for Spare the Air or the SAC Air District, you can follow that. A lot of you probably did see that the governor last week or the week before has already declared California a wildfire emergency. So they're expecting a very active wildfire season again. And then Breathe California actually came to the meeting, and this was something I thought that was really interesting. They're going to be doing a pilot program of working with, they're going to identify 5 school sites in the county, and they're going to monitor, they're going to work with the school districts to come up with plans during smoky days. Because for those of you who recall, we had universities shutting down, but not public schools. Some of the things I shared with them is, depending on the age of the school, most of our schools here are what we would consider to be fairly modern, considering, the first schools are probably mostly 60s and 70s were construction. So we probably have very few that lack central air systems. So, there are a lot of places still in this region where each school room has a window unit.
Our schools are air conditioned because of the bond measures that Rancho Cordova residents passed.
For Forest Cordova, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, most of our sites are not of the age of some of the other places in the region. So they are going to be working on coming up with smoky day plans and what is really the safest in a lot of instances, closing schools and sending kids home is probably more dangerous than letting them stay on the school site with an air conditioner running or an air filter running. So more to come on that. Garrett and I went to the 2x2 with Sac City Unified, had a good discussion around their budget difficulties and kind of where they are. At this point, just as someone who used to be on that school board, they have nothing left to cut. If they cannot get savings from negotiations through their health care, especially for their teachers, the state will take them over at the end of the year. That is the sad truth of where they are today. There is no summer school. There are many of the tools and things that we had at our disposal 7, 8, 9 years ago to balance their budget just don't exist anymore. 91% of their costs are coming from their salary and benefits for their employees. That tells you that closing schools and doing other things like that are not viable methods to closing a $35 million budget gap in a budget that's $450 million. So more to come from that. Hopefully the teachers union will start to work with the school district. We also had our 2x2 with Elk Grove Unified. I think that was probably at least a more positive conversation in talking about future school sites and other things like that. But those conversations have always been really great. Garrett and I, again, attended the Sac Valley League of California Cities regional meeting, I guess is what they're called, the Sac Valley meeting. Very eye-opening and kind of hearing what West Sac and some other folks are working on. The one thing I would just point out is their next meeting is going to be held in Paradise. So if anyone's interested in attending that, they are going to have the next one of those meetings actually hosted in Paradise with, I think, an opportunity to tour some of the aftermath. Attended the chat dinner. So this is the School for Hearing Impaired Children in Rancho. Yeah. So that was a great event. Actually, a coworker of mine, the regional manager for my bank, she's on that board, and she kind of alerted me to the date, and Garrett attended that as well. Great event, great organization. If you're not familiar with them, you should get to know them. It's a School for Hearing Impaired Children. It's right behind the Goodwill on Coloma Road, or Coloma Boulevard. A fantastic organization. We're really, really lucky to have something so unique and so great for kids in our city. Right. And then finally, attended the Chamber Business Awards Luncheon, and great job to Diane and her whole team. I don't know if any of them are here, but that was great. I haven't been able to attend that the last couple of years just because of scheduling conflicts. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay, so Maria and I attended Rotary just last week or the week before, and we went specifically because Ed Fletcher was making a presentation about a project that he has, and we are all going to hear more about that later this evening. Donald is right. The Rancho Cordova Chamber of Commerce annual luncheon was absolutely terrific. So many wonderful businesses in Rancho Cordova, and people where we have attended the grand openings, and it's great to see them grow and prosper. And it was especially fun to attend their first ever Business Hall of Fame Awards, which, as we all know, were given to one to Kurt Haven, our former Director of Economic Development, and the other one to Aerojet, which is arguably, other than Mather Field, is arguably the oldest business in Rancho Cordova. A few days later, a lot of us attended a lunch with First Northern Bank, which is opening a branch office here in Rancho Cordova. We introduced them to Rancho Cordova, and and they introduced us to the bank, which was which was very nice. It's a personal kind of a bank, and I know they'll find a great niche here in Rancho. And then Bob and David and I attended the rescheduled opening of Cordova Girls Softball. And it is always so fun to see these incredible little people in their cute little homemade costumes, their tutus and their fairy wings and their ladybird wings, and the names that the younger girls teams have are just amazing. And then to celebrate all of the all-stars that got awards, and to acknowledge the fact that, as the executive director puts it, they play softball here in Rancho Cordova furiously, acknowledging that the name of the girls softball team, the Fury, which has been to national championships and always hopes every year to go back. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Garrett?
All right, so as Donald said, I went to the Cordova BBs, which are great, lots of good businesses. Elk Grove Unified, talking about the new high school that eventually will come into Rancho. Sounds like it's making good progress, and Cyrus is spearheading that. The LCC Sac Valley was interesting because it was down in West Sac, and it's always good to see what cities are trying to do to revitalize a lot of the things that we're doing. They did, however, show us the new bridge that's going to go over the water and around the river in this kind of swoop. So that was interesting. The chat, C-Chat, was great because it's always good to donate to those types of organizations. Me and David and McGarvey were all covered in colors at the Holly Festival, and they even doused his wife, which I was like, "Oop, that's her life. You're touching her face. Well, you're so close to dying. You should walk away." And she actually took it with grace. I was like, if you'd done that to my wife, I'd have been in the news. So close. And then Saxony Unified is terrible. I mean, the things that's going on with them, I feel so bad for them, because the kids that have less, the kids in that organization are going to be hurt so badly if they can't find a way to do something, and I don't think they have a solution. So it's heart-wrenching. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And David?
I've got a bunch of stuff on my list here, so I'll try to be to the point. Been participating in the Faith Council that Garrett has kicked off here in Rancho Cordova. Very productive discussions among a number of churches. Very happy to be a part of that, proud of that effort. It follows just right in the footsteps of, what we've done with the art community, history community, youth sports, and now faith. There was a chart I was telling Garrett from, I don't know, Linda, how many years ago, when we first started the community council partnership. Must be 10 years ago or more. And there was this faith council on there, and it wasn't until you organized it that it actually sort of happened. So it's the missing piece that we've had around here for a long time. So thank you for doing that. I was a speaker at the Children's Museum annual dinner a couple weeks ago and attended the Little League grand opening and the girls softball opening. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, our police department has a little update on girls softball results on Saturday. We might need to hear from at some point. There was a bit of a challenge by text message between a certain officer's daughter's team and a Rancho Cordova team. And I can't quite remember how that turned out, but it seems like Rancho Cordova did all right. Anything to add from the corner?
Yes, you guys did very well in doubleheader.
So one of our officers said that the girls did very well in
Yeah.
the doubleheader.
I think it was something like 15-0 and 17-5 in the
that
second
would
one,
be
or
very well.
something like that. Very competitive in any case. That's great. I attended PAL March Madness and had a team that was playing there, so that was another great event. It's really neat to see the basketball interest in Rancho Cordova as it comes out, and the stuff that PAL can make happen just because of who they are. There's a lot of potential between PAL and youth activities. I'd love to see that develop more. I was also and I spoke at the Festival of Color, the Holy Festival. It's HOLI, I think. Yep. Got pretty colored up. Purples, yellows, greens. They tell you to wear white when you attend, and yeah, it doesn't stay a nice pristine white for very long. Very fun event, and the Garrett was practically not recognizable. There was so much color of many varieties covering Garrett. I wasn't sure who he was.
Yeah, if you bring your 2 sons with you and they happen to be of underage, they feel most comfortable with throwing bags of color at their dad because they know I won't do anything to him in public. So you just smile and take it. Oh, is that a bag of green all over dad's clothes? That's so good. Oh, yay, fun.
The fun part of that was apparently when it started, the Children's Museum staff were saying, now keep the color on the grass, not. There was color everywhere. I mean, there's no restraining the color once it starts. It's like baby powder, colored baby powder. You can think of it like that. I also attended the Chamber Business Awards ever so briefly, but it appeared to be a very great event. And I have taken 2 trips for the city. One was for SACOG. We attended the National League of Cities meeting back in D.C. I sit on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, which is a pretty interesting time because we have an infrastructure bill moving this year. There's a debate between doing an infrastructure funding package this year or re-upping the every 5-year overall transportation plan for the country. So there's an awful lot of activity going on there with that committee. I talked to I was a speaker at the meeting for the First Tier Suburbs group, and I had a very interesting discussion. They do something called a federal agency roundtable. So they set up a big room and they bring, maybe it's 30 federal agencies into the room, and they're at numbered tables. And so if your city has an issue with fill in the blank federal agency, you can go talk to their representative face to face, or just a question. It's really cool. And so the room gets really busy, and they had a National Park Service person there. So I've shared with you that wacky idea I have about, do we have anything that's National Park Service worthy in Rancho Cordova? And it just so happened the guy who was staffing the table is the administrator of the program at the National Park Service that gives grants to localities to plan and figure out, do you have something or not? And I said, my best pitch is, this is a Cold War site. Mather, Aerojet, Cold War activity, space race activity. And he said, we've had an internal discussion and we are incredibly short on those sites within the Park Service, and you should work on that and see what you can come up with.
My word.
Yeah. So it's not like you're launching a national park, but they're national monuments. There's all different levels of designations. So I have the information about what to do next. I guess this is one of those wild and crazy long-term ideas. You just pursue it a little bit and see what happens. The second trip I took to D.C. was for the executive leadership mission to D.C. And Donald, you attended that 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. It's a smaller cap-to-cap-like trip. I think you have to be invited to attend is the way it works. Daryl Steinberg and I were supposed to chair it this year. He was unable to attend, so I ended up as the last standing chair. Yeah, de facto chair, which led to me going to an awful lot of meetings while I was there, but that was all good. It was a partnership between the Asian Chamber, SACOG, the Building Trades Council, and Labor Council, and GSAC, Greater Sacramento Economic Development Group. Very focused visits at the White House, Capitol Hill, and in the administration, the agencies. So it was productive. I think it melds very nicely with what Cap to Cap does. I was advocating to that group, and I will to the Metro Chamber and the Cap to Cap sponsors as well, that we're just missing sort of the third leg of continuing that effort more year-round. The third leg is probably not so much visiting legislatures as it is administrative offices. Because if you can keep up these conversations, you're more likely to gain success than showing up once, having a discussion, and hoping for the best. You need to build relationships and continue pushing your issues. That's just from my experience working there. And finally, I attended the League of Cities committee meetings last week. Revenue and taxation is a committee I sit on there, and all kinds of crazy notions coming, including one of which would broaden workers' comp within the state of California for any public employee to include any injury on the job, off the job, or even out of state, and count it as a state injury for workers' comp purposes. That is legislation that's got good steam in the legislature and obviously costs cities a lot of money, because then my basketball injury from coaching the kids would then be publicly, supportable and reimbursable. There's a whole bunch of issues like that I'm not going to go into. If you want the briefing materials from me, I can make them available. But there's really scary stuff happening and a few opportunities this year in the legislature. That's my report.
Thank you, David. One thing that, like you said about the gentleman who was saying, the one item they're really short on is Cold War items, events, things like that. And we have, I think, probably, from what you were told, more here than they have almost anyplace else. Things still left over from at Mather, at Aerojet, that, you know, we have a lot of things that I think we could be adding a lot of Rancho Cordova to this, really bring up our name more on that too. So that's something, so I'm glad that you were there and are able to get more information about that. And the color was great. It was enjoyable watching the boys and their son enjoying each other. At least you close your eyes most of the time when what color is getting to you. And we had our share. I mean, nothing like you had, I have to admit. That was, yeah, you were number one, I think, on the list of colors. You had more than anybody else, and that was really great. Softball, that was fantastic. The name of some of the angels, and it was just wonderful. Looking at those girls and enjoying themselves. The ones that are just little toddlers, and you can tell they can still get around pretty well, but they have a little more growing up to do, but they just enjoyed themselves tremendously with those wings and everything else they had. It was great. And then Mr. Peterson isn't here anymore, but we were there when they opened up Riverview STEM Academy again. And when Mr. Peterson and all the things that they've done on that, I know when it was Riverview Elementary School, my kids went to that. And then they closed that school and the Cordova Lane, but opening up this Riverview STEM Academy has just blossomed. I know he would like to have a sixth grade, but I'm not sure if they're going to do anything like that. But I think it would be really good for them to be able to do that. So a lot of the kids would stay in the sixth grade rather than going to middle school. It kind of alternates, but at least if they had that option, I think some of the kids would stay there at the Riverview STEM Academy. So we'll have to see how that goes, or if it goes, but that's something that's really important. But again, I wanted to thank Mr. Peterson for everything he's done on that, for that STEM Academy. So we'll see what we can do to continue helping them and do everything we can to help all the schools. And I think that's what I've got. And our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few short items. We had the Sacramento Valley Division City Managers meeting last week, and the main topic of the discussion was a presentation by the town manager of Paradise. And it's interesting to hear how the recovery is going. There are many, many lessons that need to be learned, and some of the challenges they face. So it's not only a good discussion, a robust discussion for us to learn some lessons and understand exactly what to expect in terms of major emergencies, but also the feedback and the input and the assistance that we have been able to give to the town of Paradise is also very badly needed at this time. We also had, I had the opportunity to sit down and have a good meeting, a good discussion with Cindy Nickel, who is the new director of the Sacramento County Department of Airports. She comes, I call her new, but she's been at the job for about 5 months. It gave me an opportunity to understand her vision, where she wants to go with the airport, and some of the plans and objectives that she has. And I will definitely plan on asking her to, at some point, to make some presentation about some of the plans and the vision, and also the master plan that she and her team are working on. And then one other thing that I wanted to point out, and some of you may have noticed some work that's going on the median on Zinfandel near White Rock Road, near between Dado Drive and White Rock. That is a section of a median work that was, through some old agreement, was actually owned and maintained by the adjacent property owners. And after many years of discussions, our public works team has been able to reach an agreement, and the city is going to landscape that section and also work through a partnership with Moss Adams Building to provide For
Longs
the,
and Findell.
for the along Zinfandel,
Yeah.
that section.
Okay.
It was always an
I meant to
eyesore.
send you an email, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was always an eyesore, and we've been able to strike an agreement. And then last but not least, I think I had mentioned that we had put in an application for the All-America City Award for 2019. I'm very pleased to announce that we have been selected as one of the top 30 finalists. And we have is it top 20 now? Okay, so that's makes it even easier. So we so we have a wonderful team that's working on this. The final presentation will be in Denver, Colorado, and we hope to have a team to. We're like we've always said, we're in it to win it. And Shelly and Maria and Megan are some of the cohorts on this project, and we look forward to that challenge.
That's going to be awesome.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, it will be, definitely. Thank you. On to item 13, have our consent calendar items consists of matters deemed routine and non-controversial by staff unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration. All items will be approved by one motion. Are there any items council wishes to pull?
Seeing none, I'll move approval of the consent calendar, items 13.1 through 13.5.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Councilmember Terry?
Aye.
Councilmember Gatewood?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sander?
Aye.
Mayor McGarvey?
Aye. Very good, thank you. Okay, item 14, we have no consent public hearing items. And item 15, there's no public hearing items. Item 16, ask our city clerk to announce the subject, please.
Update on the fiscal year 2019 through 2020 Community Enhancement Fund grant applications received and internally led initiatives for council consideration.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Stacy Delaney, the Community Enhancement Analyst, and this evening we will be taking this first opportunity to discuss the fiscal year 1920 grant applications that we've received, as well as the allocations that we anticipate for the internally led projects. I'm going to start off with just a quick recap of the grant process that we used, and then I'll also review the anticipated award amounts for the community grants as well as the department-led initiatives. I'll provide a quick summary of grant applications received, and later in April, we'll actually be sharing the recommendations that staff will be making. And lastly, this evening, I'll be going over the timeline and the process for awarding the grants this year. So back in December 2018, we had a council work session, and during that meeting, we talked about the criteria that we use, the prioritization method, as well as the timeline we were expecting, and we confirmed all of this information in that early December meeting. We then opened the grant application cycle on February 15th and closed it on March 15th. And during that time, 81 applications were submitted to the city for consideration. And since March 15th, we had one applicant withdraw their application, so that leaves us with 80. We have also confirmed with each applicant that we have received their package, and we've provided them with some of the important dates that are happening in the April and May timeframe so that they can attend and participate as needed. The criteria on the screen is what the city uses to help evaluate projects and programs that are up for funding. And this is the same criteria that we reviewed in December and confirmed, and it's also the same information that was included in all of the grant application materials. If we determine that a grant application meets the minimum criteria that's established, we then look to see If it leverages other funding resources or partnerships in the community, we look to see what type of return on investment this project or program will bring. And then we also evaluate whether or not the organization has the capacity to carry out the project and that it can be done in a finite period of time. And that's usually 1 fiscal year. And then lastly, we look to see if there can be measurable goals or that a team's effort can be focused. So those are the 5 prioritization methods that we generally use after we've decided that it either meets criteria or it does not. The 80 applications that are currently under review will be finalized at the end of this week once staff meets collectively. We actually have a review team that each person individually reads all 80 applications and does their own internal evaluation. And then we come together and make a recommendation based upon that input as well as the input that we receive from school superintendents to get their individual rankings on projects that impact their school sites and students. The agenda packet that went out for the April 1st meeting did include a copy of the 80 applications, and it also included the preliminary summary of the applications by category, but it does not at this point list a recommendation, and that will be coming to you starting at the April 15th meeting. So tonight we will not be discussing the community grant applications. Our focus is going to be on the internally led allocations to departments. This slide lists all the funding categories under the Community Enhancement Fund and what the recommended budget is for each one. You'll see under each funding category name a percentage, and that's basically the approximate percentage of the Community Enhancement Fund that's recommended towards that specific line item. So in the case of the legacy projects, it's roughly 25 to 26% of the total Community Enhancement Fund budget. Public safety is 17%. Public works, economic development, and arts is roughly 14%. Education is 7%. The administration of the fund is 5%. And then other projects and programs roughly represent 3 to 4% of the total Community Enhancement Fund. You'll notice that the recommended budget for both fiscal year 1920 and fiscal year 2021, we're estimating to be $8.2 million, and that's based upon the latest sales tax projections we've received. And if that number changes, we'll certainly keep you apprised. So again, we will be talking about the 1920 applications at the next meeting, but we're going to go ahead and go into the internally led projects one by one. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? Nope? Okay. So the legacy projects is presented more like a balance sheet. You'll notice that the legacy fund balance as of June 30th is roughly $8.5 million. And of that amount, you'll see listed below the items that council has already allocated funding for, as well as the legacy fund allocations we're anticipating in fiscal year 18-19, as well as 19-20. So you'll see that we're anticipating from the fiscal year 18-19 budget that roughly $2.6 million is being added into the legacy fund. And then again, in fiscal year 19-20, approximately $2.1 million has been added into the fund. You have already made commitments to girls softball in the amount of $3 million, and you've made a commitment to Little League upgrades also for $3 million, and enhancements to the pool project for $3 million. And in addition to that $3 million for the pool project, there's an additional $400,000, but that's coming out of park renovation fees. You've also allocated funding towards the Civic Center in the amount of $1 million. And for improvements to the Sacramento Children's Museum, $200,000. So if you take all of that into account, you had roughly $3,066,000 left. And you'll notice that the last item listed, if you were to have funding set aside for the Civic Center that takes you through project design, you would need to allocate an additional $3 million in addition to the $1 million you already have allocated.
Can I ask for a clarification on
Sure.
the Sacramento Children's Museum? It was my understanding that those were no longer going to be for improvements, those were going to be for planning for the build-out of the other side of that building? Is that accurate?
So
I don't
we
think it
have,
was going to be used for improvements anymore, no?
it's a little bit of both. So
Okay.
we're working with an architect to develop the plans, and then those plans are going to come back most likely on May 20th, and you'll get a chance to see what those enhancements would look like, as well as what the potential costs may be.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the legacy items before I move on to public safety? No. The recommended projects under public safety look very similar to prior years. So you'll notice that this includes the continuation of the crime suppression unit, as well as the shared funding of a school resource officer and the continuation of some of the youth programs such as the Holiday Star program. One change this year is that the focus of 50% of a officer is going to be redirected towards the Folsom, Olson, Zinfandel area. So that third item is a slight change. Do you have any questions or comments about public safety before we move?
Yeah, Stacy, did you just say funding from a school resource officer or funding from a POP officer?
So the change is there, in this fiscal year, we have funding of half of an officer that's focused on RT. And the recommendation is that in fiscal year 1920, it will be funding of 50% of a POP officer focusing on the Folsom, Olson, Zinfandel area. And we do
Okay.
have representatives from PD if you have.
Yeah, okay, so the SROs are not involved.
You'll still get the SRO as part of line 2.
This only affects the officer for regional transit. And Chief Pittman is here in the room, and he can further elaborate on that and why the change is being recommended.
Can we do that?
If there is a, yeah.
I'm also a little unclear as to what's actually what the recommendation is.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, council members, Chief of Police Chris Pittman here. So our recommendation this year is to actually change the funding we had allocated to the half-time position, or 50-50 funded with the regional transit police that we've been working with. We had our RCPD officer assigned over there for just a little bit over a year now. We weren't realizing the return on investment that we're hoping to get on that for Rancho Cordova. So we want to change that position to focus specifically on the Folsom, Olson, Zinfandel area, where we are having some good success and some other programs we've implemented recently. So we want to dedicate that position to focus on that, and that would fund us throughout the end of the year. And Councilmember Bud, did you have another question about some of the funding?
I don't,
The second item, the one that's the school resource officer, we share the cost with Folsom Cordova Unified School District.
okay,
And that's status quo. So we have 3 SROs
Yeah.
that work with the school district, and one's completely funded by the city, one's at 10/12 funded by the school district, and then there's a 50-50 one with the K-9.
okay. So going back to the RT officer,
Yes.
I actually had the feeling that it was very useful to have somebody there.
The liaison portion of it is very useful for the city. It has shown benefits there, but we're not seeing the benefit to the actual issues that we're having related to RT in the city itself. And so we feel that it'd be better to change how we're deploying that resource. So taking the same position basically and focusing more on Rancho Cordova and less on other areas of the county. And so dedicated just to the city of Rancho Cordova and staying in the city.
Okay, and you're right, because I just assumed they were staying in the city, kind of like getting on one place and getting off the other place and going back in the other direction. But if they're focused on the On the Folsom Olson Island, then who monitors what happens at Mill Station or at Sunrise or whatever?
In regards to RT?
Right.
Well, we'll still have the same relationship we have with RT. We just don't have the officer dedicated just to RT to work on their team. So we'll still, with our command staff, works with their chief over there already. And so we'll have that communication going on all as normal. So we just don't have an officer dedicated riding the line that may leave outside Rancho Cordova. The officer will, the intentions of that FOS pop officer will deal with the RT stations that are close to the FOS, so the Sunrise area and down to Mills probably, but not beyond that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a quick
I'm
question
just
about
glad
the
that you
same
have
thing?
go ahead.
Who are we splitting the 50% with?
Well, the plan is to continue funding throughout the rest of this year to this fiscal year, and then all the way into the end of January. And so then that officer would go away. So it would just get us through the end of the year, and then we would, the operation in the FOS area that we're hoping will clean up some of the issues we're having there would hopefully be done by then.
Done by the end of 2019?
Yeah, that's our intentions.
Okay, so we're fully funding the position through the end of
Just
the
to
year.
get us through the end of the year. We already have the position.
We were
that-
sharing, this was, correct me if I'm wrong, this wasn't being shared, the other half was being paid by RT.
It
being-
was.
Oh, okay, I thought it was being paid by Folsom. I
So,
don't know. Okay.
Folsom has a half-time officer as well. And
Okay,
so,
they're doing it with
and
both
we
of them.
do,
Okay.
we basically do the same thing.
Okay.
And so, our plan is, because it's half the money, to continue to fund that officer, dedicate it specifically to Rancho Cordova in the FOS area there to deal with some of the operations we have going right now to help that area. And then hopefully by the end of the year, we'll see the desired results we wanted, and then that position would go away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I was wondering about the continuation of our officer there for the Mill Station, because we're right across the street from the college. We want to make sure that that and our stations there for the shopping and everything are taken care of. And I like the idea of keeping them just inside Rancho Cordova. That's very good, yeah.
Yeah, well, the vision was actually to still continue to do the RT part, but more focused on just the Rancho side of it. So we wouldn't stop working with RT. It would just be dedicated to the FOS area and those RT stations there. And we also have other initiatives that we've deployed, such as the homeless outreach team, other things that are dealing with those stations as well. So those would all continue also. We don't foresee any lapse of coverage that we have right now.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, very good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Public Works and Infrastructure projects. The recommended Public Works and Infrastructure projects are listed on the screen, and many of these projects are for the continuation of successful programs as well as some important focus areas. So the Enhanced Litter and Graffiti Abatement Program, as well as the city's urban forest, are continuation projects from prior fiscal years. And the Sunrise Boulevard and the sidewalk repair projects are much larger projects, and the amounts represented under the staff recommendation represents only the amount that would come from the Community Enhancement Fund. And then the last item on this section is a portable message board. And the idea is to use it when we need to announce either maintenance on roadways or important emergency services and announcements such as that. Do you have any questions or comments on these sections?
No, this is just addition to what we would have in our regular budget anyway, as far as the sidewalks are concerned and all that.
Correct. This just represents what's coming or recommended to come from the Community Enhancement Fund and not the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
So the items on the screen represent kind of a combination of economic development initiatives, community engagement, as well as community development. And the first item on the screen is really a broadened version of what's been allocated in the past for economic development. And you'll notice that the business incentive program, as well as the sign and facade program, those are programs that we've also had in prior fiscal years. The community building, outreach, and community service activities, This is also a variety of initiatives that the city has, and those are all projects and programs that we have in place right now. The neighborhood services, homeless and nuisance property abatement, that's also a line item that we have in the current Community Enhancement Fund budget. And then the last item is the City Gateway Monument and Banner Placemaking. And this would be to put a monument on Folsom Boulevard, as well as some additional banners and hardware needed primarily on the Matherfield Road, and some seasonal banner changeouts in different corridors throughout the city. Any questions or comments about these programs and projects listed?
I'll just say what I was telling the city manager. At some point, we should come up with one name for this department.
Yeah.
If that's community development or something else, but
Instead of a hodgepodge?
of economic investment, and yeah, they're all kind of, I think relatively they're under one director now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great.
The administration of the fund is set at 5% of revenues. Therefore, based on anticipated revenues of 8.2 million, the budgeted amount would be $410,000.
I just had one question on this, and this isn't anything that needs to happen in this budget cycle. It would be really nice if somebody could look at the other tax measures that have been passed throughout the region to see what kind of administrative costs they're putting on themselves. Measure you've just passed, West Sac's done their like 5th recently. It'd be helpful to understand kind of what the going rate is, or if we're the only ones that take responsibility for paying for that within the funds that are coming in. But it would be helpful to just understand, are there cities out there paying themselves 9% for this, some of them paying 2%, and what's like the realized cost?
From what I know and having looked at some of the tax measures, this is very much on the very low side.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's actually why I'm asking the question. Yeah.
All right, very good. Now, I'm going to ask the city clerk, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
And I would just add, if I might, to help answer Mr. Terry's question, I mean, among the reasons why there is a lot of staff work is there's a lot of new and novel questions that come up each year in each cycle, whether it's on the long range and large project planning side, or whether it's just an attempt to be kind of highly responsive to our staff work has to be as active as the community is creative and innovative. So they do challenge us to come up with new answers to their new ideas every year.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I know everyone in this city works really hard, but I think Stacy and her team are right up there as far as the amount of work that they're asked to do each and every year, especially this time of year. God bless you. But understanding that also we're taking a lot of applications and stuff that other cities aren't doing. Just to kind of level set with the rest of the region that have special taxes like this, that, you know, how much is it costing them to administer these funds, and are we staying in par with that? And again, that answer can come 6 months from now. I'm not in a hurry, just want to kind of put it out there that at some point it'd be nice to know it.
Well, and probably when you're talking about that, it's important to always point out that this is a fund that is used literally to enhance Rancho Cordova. This is not a fund that is used to supplant or supplement or augment the general fund or their routine budgetary items. This goes to specifically, it's dedicated to ensuring that we can do more for people rather than just fill a gap in a budget.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the nice things about it, is we can add more to sidewalks, to whatever else we need to do on that. We already have some that's part of the regular budget, and this just gives us a chance to do more and do it sooner. And I apologize for stopping a little bit too soon. I know Stacey Delaney isn't quite done yet, so if you would go ahead and finish.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we are still reviewing the applications and the supplemental documents that we've received. The plan is to be finished by the end of this week so that we can make recommendations to council during the April 15th city council meeting. And the final decisions on the Community Enhancement Fund need to be made on or before May 28th so that the adoption of the budget can take place in early June. And I don't plan on revisiting the internal allocations after tonight unless you have specific questions. My plan is to list what you've seen tonight as part of the overall document that you receive so you can see the internal allocations in relationship to the grant applications that are being requested. Any questions? No. I'll be back April 15th.
All right. Now, we have some cards.
When are we going to get the first round of those? When do you expect those?
The first round of,
Like our first Excel sheets of.
so you have a preliminary Excel sheet in the agenda packet for tonight. It just does not include recommendations. And then on the April 15th agenda packet, it will include recommendations.
That's what I was asking for. Thank you.
Yes.
Ready?
I have 3 speaker cards for this item. Will Ed Fletcher please come forward? He will be the first speaker, and then following Ed will be Catherine, and following Catherine will be Mita. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you for having me. My name is Ed Fletcher, a longtime reporter at the Sacramento Bee. Some of you may know me through that context. In this context, I'm talking about myself as being a longtime participant of Burning Man. I grew up in the Orangevale area, started working at the newspaper in 2000, and went to my first Burning Man shortly thereafter. A friend of mine had told me how amazing it was, and I was an adventurous soul enough that I decided that I would go. And I discovered that people all around the world had been going to this event, and there was a very unique and interesting culture that developed there. It certainly wasn't the first event to throw a big bonfire on the beach, but in the 80s it moved from the beach to northern Nevada. And what I've really grew from it was this culture of participation, where that everybody there wasn't a spectator and there wasn't performers. Everybody there was there to put on the event. And my group did one thing, another group did another thing, and they all kind of bring their own activity to it. The other major part about Burning Man was the art. It's the largest outdoor art gallery in the world for the week that it's there. 70,000 people come to this thing, and all of this art needs to go somewhere. And we want to bring it to bring it to Rancho Cordova.
I was going to say, I should give you some direction.
Can we edit that part out there? We want to bring it to Rancho Cordova. I started doing some events. We called them Burners on Broadway. And the idea was to bring a little bit of this culture and this activity back to the more urban environment. There's a group, Sacramento Valley Spark, and they had been doing more seclusive events that were mainly for participants. I wanted to do things that were aimed at bringing this culture back to the city and sharing what we loved about it, sharing the ideas of radical inclusion and radical self-expression, and leave no trace, participation, immediacy. And those are some of the ideas that you guys talk about in your community plan. And I also wanted to thank you guys for doing that. I think it's very forward-thinking. Some of your criteria you talked about, community pride, civic engagement, quality of life, all of those things we think we can help bring to Rancho Cordova through the Sacramento Playa Art Park. I've given you some material there. We're asking for a smaller amount in 2019, but with the major amount coming in the 2020 cycle, with the idea of bringing a tiny bit of this art and culture to Rancho Cordova. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Catherine.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Catherine Zwern, and I'm a resident of Fair Oaks. And while Ed has shared with you what the history of Burning Man is, What I'd like to share with you is what does it mean to be an artist? In the administrator's office where my children go to school, there's a sign that says, "Art keeps kids off drugs." It's one of those tenets that I look at and think about, what else does art do for our children? It helps them define who they are. Art is one of those areas where you don't have to be able to hit the farthest baseball or be able to dribble across the floor. It could be one of those activities that the introverted children can engage in and feel good about and bring it out to the world. It's also something that extroverted children can participate in because art can be movement, it can be two-dimensional, it can be an expression of words. All of these kinds of art come to Burning Man. This will be my 16th year at Burning Man. The role I play there is for an organization called Artery. It is our curating function as if we were a museum. We touch the artists, we connect with the artists. They're passionate, and some of them are very local to us. We're really excited about an art installation called the Giant Pinball, which is going to be coming from this region. We have an art installation that's being built just down the street from here in Rancho Cordova in a warehouse. It's called the Circle of Friends, which brings me to the other piece of art. Art is about bringing community together, about people who may not share the same ideas coming together around a neutral topic on which they can begin to engage in conversations. And from those engagements, can perhaps begin to discuss some of the more difficult topics that we are struggling with in our local community. It also brings together people from different parts of the economy. There are those who will be investing in this project. We've already begun to reach our feelers out and invite them to participate. It will bring those people who enjoy working with their hands, whether it be welders or builders or people who work with wood, painters, muralists. Any variety of people can come and participate. And so those will all create commingling in our community and strengthen our community roots. This is part of what art brings to a community. We're really excited for this project. Again, my name is Catherine Zwern. You'll see my name on the application when you receive it. I am here representing Sacramento Valley Spark. We hope to bring the spark into Rancho Cordova with joy, excitement, communication, and art. Thank you.
Mita Kashat.
Welcome. We've seen you before.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is probably my third or fourth time I've come to you and spoken about Measure H.
No,
It
was Stacy.
Thank you. You can also tell I'm a novice at this. First of all, I want to tell you that I am very proud to be a resident of Rancho Cordova. Bob and I have worked in volunteer programs and a number of things, and we do call Rancho Cordova home, and there's a lot of things that we love about it. The enhancement fund is something that I am not in love with. When we started and voted for the enhancement fund, one of the big drawing points was that we were going to do our infrastructure faster. And so at one council meeting, I was asking for more money for code enforcement. And Councilman Terry asked me to give him a dollar amount, which I did not. I have come prepared tonight to give you a dollar amount. And I'm changing some of the categories. I took out 3 categories that actually Councilman Terry was talking about that should have a different name. And I have named it. It's called the Feel Good category. And I have given you $1 million to play with that. And I think if anybody can participate in that and get the benefits of $1 million out of the enhancement fund, that's a good thing. My main focus is infrastructure. And I have decided that we should put 50% of the enhancement fund in infrastructure, and we should hand it to Albert and let him say, go repair the streets in the northeast section of Rancho Cordova and the sidewalks. Some people have mentioned that we should give them 90% and get this job done. Streets are crumbling, sidewalks are crumbling, as you've heard earlier today. And I don't see any increase in your allotment for infrastructure. In fact, I think it has decreased. We in the north side of Rancho Cordova are sick of graveled roads, crumbling sidewalks, and while all of this feel-good stuff is going on, I like to feel good too, but there's a price, and I think you know I am very much a fiscal conservative, and I would like to see the foundation of our city taken care of before we go into these really big projects. I find it curious that we can spend $3 million on a softball field, $3 million for Little League, and I don't disagree with sports and that they're a good thing, but I think they are we have overindulged in those to the detriment of the foundation of our city.
Please wrap up your comments.
Am I through? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Gosh, I had another half hour. I want to leave you with one word that I wish you would put in your vocabulary when you think of enhancement fund, and that's restraint. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no other speaker cards for that item.
Okay, is anyone else who would like to speak that hasn't filled out a card? Well, thank you for your input to the audience. I'll go to this. I'm wondering if there's a need for roll call right now on this item.
Well, I think the idea was, at the council's direction, we started with the high numbers, the high allocation numbers with the legacy and some of the infrastructure and public safety allocations. So we want to have a level of support and assurance from the council that that's what we will be working with, because as Stacy Delaney mentioned, our next focus of discussion will be community grants, and we will assume that unless there are any changes, that these allocations remain as presented tonight.
So I could move approval of the staff's recommendation on the internally driven projects, or recommend a tentative approval, whatever city attorney thinks is appropriate.
Considering this is a budget item, wouldn't we do that in June once we finish? I mean, we're gonna give staff direction and
Well, I
whittle
would have
stuff
thought
down,
so
but
also.
I wouldn't imagine that this is a formal motion today.
It's not intended to be a formal motion, but we want to basically understand that the council supports the allocations as presented.
So how about if I move that we direct staff to maintain the current allocations that they are recommending under internally driven projects?
And as a matter of utility, Mr. City Manager, would it be helpful to add, for purposes of continuing to build next year's budget? Yes.
So moved.
That would be very appropriate.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'm confused.
Donald, I don't think this locks us in any way. We're just
Why
saying
vote?
this is okay.
Right. But we do that in workshops all the time by just saying, yeah, this is on track, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
When we get to the next round, there'll be too much money there or too little. We'll have to nudge one way or the other.
I have no problem one way or
It's
the other.
typically what happens.
Yeah, I don't see the utility of voting on it now as if, again, to his point, it doesn't lock us in any way into the next discussion if all of a sudden we decide that, which we sometimes do. I see the question that you're asking me. we vote today and 2 weeks from now, not everybody up here can whittle off everything that they are, that doesn't mean that we're not going to start moving things around. I mean, voting today doesn't stop us from doing that.
No, recommending to the staff to continue what they have and then giving us in 2 weeks what we're really going to be voting on as far as small items and everything else, I think. But I think what Linda suggested, I think is a good idea to tell staff to move forward with what they have.
In that particular category.
I mean, I guess it is set up for action. All right, that's fine.
We have a motion, but.
Second.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Councilmember Terry?
Aye.
Councilmember Gatewood is absent for this vote. Vice Mayor Sander?
Aye.
Mayor McGarvey?
Aye. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. On to next item. Ask our city clerk to announce the subject, please.
Code enforcement goals and priorities.
Good evening, Council. Carrie Simpson, Neighborhood Services Manager, and I'm here this evening with Community Development Director Elizabeth Sparkman and Deputy City Manager Micah Runner. I wanted to note before we start this presentation, this program has nothing related to boats, RVs, and trailers, which is currently being discussed through a council-appointed subcommittee. That committee has been meeting, and the good news is we hope to return to the council fairly soon with some recommendations. So that being said, I just wanted to remind everybody on January 8th, we held a workshop to have a priority discussion regarding code enforcement. We heard from the community in attendance, and staff and council listened intently to their concerns. We obtained a good summary and feel for the overall concerns, and tonight we want to hear from the City Council. So let's move on to the agenda. So tonight we'll be reviewing the neighborhood nuisance data, looking at the resident priority survey results, discussing some operational considerations that we have based on the information we've received, and then hopefully we'll move on to council discussion. Our goal at the workshop on January 8th was to obtain feedback on priorities, set goals, and focus on outcomes from that meeting. During that workshop, we gave an overview of all the programs in code enforcement, concluding with an emphasis on neighborhood nuisance. So looking at, we presented these statistics at that meeting. This was the neighborhood nuisance information from December of 2017 through December 2018. We presented the statistics for the calendar year, and as you can see, 38% of cases were complaint-driven, while 62% were proactive. During the evening, City Council listened to the community, and we concluded with that exercise, as we stated, that allowed the community members in attendance to identify what their main concerns were. Here's the information that we came from the voting. These are the results, and this was of the community members in attendance at that meeting. And as you can see, very high votes on junk and rubbish, landscape maintenance, and trash can screening. Over the last months, we have heard from the community and City Council in various settings, and we believe the overall desired outcome is well-maintained neighborhoods through robust education, enforcement, community engagement, and appropriate incentives. I would ask you to take a few moments to see if there's anything on here that I've missed or that the council has questions about. Nope. Okay. Given the information that I've heard, we're coming up with some staff actions that we plan on doing in the next few months. We are looking at our rental housing inspection and implementing the best practices to focus so that we can alleviate or allow for some additional time to work on neighborhood nuisances. We've been doing single-family units, and we've been getting to those inspections every 3 years. Recently, as we went through the Anatolia neighborhood, we found that there were hardly any issues. I mean, the biggest violations that we found out there were truly missing smoke detectors on the inside of the units, which is actually a very positive thing. So what we're suggesting that we do, or what we plan on doing, is reducing our inspections from 3 to 5 year rotation. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be dealing with complaints or nuisance properties as we see them. In addition, we feel that the multifamily inspection program has been very successful. I'm really blessed that the council has approved us to be doing this since 2009, and we've gotten rid of some of the worst properties along Folsom Boulevard, such as the Cordova Inn, the Bradshaw Inn, the First Value Inn, and other nuisance properties such as the Grandee Apartments. So we feel like we've been very successful. To be in line with other communities such as Sacramento County and Sacramento City, who have only been doing a percentage of the units out there, we feel that for our multifamily units, that we could reduce it down to every 3 years and inspect 25% of the units on the complex, while still responding to complaints. That means that if we're out there and we see 25% of the units and they're in good condition, we would move on. Should we see lots of issues or lots of violations on the property, we would come back and re-inspect the entire property.
So can we just confirm
Sure.
that what you're talking about
Yes.
is maintaining the 3-year rotation
Yes.
cycle?
Yes.
But it's more like taking a sampling.
Correct. Which is how county and city started their programs, but we feel that we feel for some of our larger, really well-maintained properties, Councilmember Budge, we're in maintenance mode, and we have very good relationships with the property owners and the property managers, and we feel very good that this would be a great way to continue on, thus allowing us to use some of the additional resources to focus on neighborhood nuisances. In addition, some other things that we plan on doing is coming back to council to have a discussion about potentially increasing the housing stock code compliance fee. We currently have the lowest in the region. Ours has been $10 for the last 15 years. Other jurisdictions are up in the $20, and so that's a discussion for a later date, but we'd definitely like to do that. And implement some code changes to make property owners more responsible for their properties. And what I mean by that is we currently require properties to be registered. We are looking at making registration for the person that's responsible for emergencies to be within 35 miles of the city of Rancho Cordova. We currently have one where a lady called me from Spain, not the easiest way to deal with an absentee landlord, and that's what we want to reduce. And then just do a reevaluation of fines and fees.
So Carrie, I remember our meeting, years ago now, with the Apartment Owners Association. And generally, they're representing the good guys out there, the responsible owners. And when we asked them, what should our next step be? They said, you need to raise your fines and fees.
Right.
The owners said, you need to raise your fines, particularly your fines, because that's the only way you get the bad guys' attention.
That's right.
So I'm in support of, raising the fines, because that does catch the bad guys, not the good guys. And the housing stock code compliance fee, I don't think I would oppose that either, because currently we're basically subsidizing this operation through general taxpayer funds in regulating a private business. That's a little bit of a tough place to be. You're asking your residents to help pay for the impact of a private business.
Correct.
So.
It's interesting that I'm going to somewhat disagree with you while agreeing with you on that one. The one danger that we run in raising that fee is at what point is the breaking point to where landlords just don't sign up? Because it's really hard to figure out who's renting their home and who's not. And so a nominal fee that encourages landlords to enroll so that we actually can go to the renter and say, can we come in and inspect your home? To the point where if it's $200, just throwing that out there, does it become cost prohibitive to where they try to hide from us?
If it was that high, it would. It's currently at 10. I think.
I agree, there's somewhere in between there.
County and city are at 20.
Right.
So we'd be talking about moving ours to, I don't know, 15 or 17 or
Yes,
20.
yes.
I don't
just
know,
wanted to
whatever you
throw it out there
recommend.
that I've rented homes in this community, and most of the management companies didn't register, and I was actually mentioning it to them, but then, like, my parents were renting a home for years, and the guy was paying the $10 and allowed the inspections and everything, and that's what we want to encourage.
Yes.
Is people to
Yes.
comply with it.
And I would be coming back with all the information, and we would
that'd
be
be great.
probably still lower than everybody else in the region, but point well taken, I really appreciate that.
So Carrie, the one thing on the slide, this operational consideration, that gives me pause is reducing the duplex inspections. Because when I think about duplexes in Rancho Cordova, now older side of town is what we're talking about here. There's a huge number of them that are not in good repair. Then there's another set of them that are in extremely good repair because they're in a homeowners association.
Right.
With serious rules.
Right.
So it's sort of like, those don't need much of our attention, but boy, the rest of them,
And we know,
they're
we know where
generally a
those
mess.
are, Vice Mayor, we know where those are, and you know, for one of not calling someone out, but I'm going to, South White Rock needs more TLC, and we will continue to do that. But what we would like to do is be allowed to use the information that we have to focus where we really need to focus. And then if we have a bad player, even if we have somebody that we believe is doing a great job, if we get a complaint, we'll go back and we'll be basing it on what we see out there. And if it requires us to go back 3 times a year, there are some places we go back time and again, but the landlords are getting that we want to have good landlords in Rancho.
So just so I'm understanding what I'm reading here, let's take a neighborhood where there's a lot of duplexes and they're a mess. You're not saying we would only go there once every 5 years on our rotation. You would go there more often on rotation, knowing that that's a target-rich environment.
Yes.
But the area that's got the homeowners association, we've never had a case,
Mhm.
every 5 years is fine there.
Anatola, prime example. We probably don't need to go every 3 years when we've gone through the entire neighborhood and the worst we dealt with was a smoke detector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's nice that you know the ones that you need to go back to, and that's probably what you're going to have to be focusing on. And any that would change, you would notice that, and I think everybody around it would notice it also. If you have someone that suddenly changes and doesn't really seem to care, then that makes a difference almost immediately.
I appreciate that, Mayor. We've got Russell and Ryan here tonight, and they both work very much so in the rental housing program, and they have relationships with the property owners. And we know who are the good property management company and the ones that we need to educate a little more. So there's a lot of education that goes on, but I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
So another operational consideration, we have some newer responsibilities. It's not that we got them from anywhere, it was just that you know, we got these newer responsibilities such as weed control and towing. And what we are looking to do is dedicate a code enforcement officer through a contract to handle less complex violations, and evaluate and adjust our municipal code around weed control. It's another one where we'd like to work with the city attorney to see what our options are to maybe make them register their vacant lots, because when we go to find the person, we need to know who's responsible immediately if something has not been maintained. So those
Very
are the,
good idea.
yes, we
And when
think
you
so.
say weed control here, we're not talking about dandelions in Garrett's front yard.
No.
We're talking about vacant lots with giant, you know, weedy growth on them, right?
Right, the one behind City Hall or the expansive area until we get new subdivisions out between here and the newer neighborhoods, yes.
Over next to Pep Boys.
Right, over next to Pep Boys.
Let's make sure that our lots, that you can't point fingers at our lots also.
We're already done, we're already working with economic development and with Todd from facilities to make sure that we are the gold standard, so I
Yes,
appreciate that comment.
absolutely.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. So another area we'd like to focus on is education outreach and incentives. And I know I talk a lot about education, but we still feel some residents are unaware of the community's property maintenance standards. And so we really want to work on a robust education and outreach program, even more so than we've done. And we're asking Maria and her team to work with us on that. And then we really want to collaborate even more with Lorianne and the community engagement program. We believe there's a lot of people out there who are interested in being community ambassadors to help us share the word. And, you know, I think we've done an amazing job over the last few years working on the police department, and we're hoping that we can actually do that same amount of public outreach and spread the word about what it is we're doing out there.
Go ahead.
I think the word I'd love to see on this slide is campaign.
Campaign.
Because as opposed to, I mean, we did a great brochure, the Good Neighbor Guide. That's awesome. We could win awards with that on its own. But that is sort of like the kind of communication you need to have with your residents 4 times a year. And then you've got to have some social media that informs them. You've got to at some point tell them, you know, you bought in a CCNR enforceable neighborhood north of Douglas in a new neighborhood. this is the standard you'll be held to. So there's a lot of education. And I don't think you can do it with just like, here's a letter, now you're
No.
gonna do it. It's gotta be
No.
a constant, evolving, interesting, helpful, community-building campaign.
Agreed, agreed. And we need to keep the pressure up and we need to keep reminding folks, and you're right. The Good Neighbor Guide is amazing, and I think that there's a lot of communities up and down the state that are trying to steal what Maria and her team did. But yes, you're absolutely right.
So I was in neighborhoods north of Douglas last week. I went to the signal turn on that had been canceled. I just didn't know it had been canceled. So I drove around, and a lot of those lawns, well, there aren't lawns. There's xeriscape, one type or another. Usually it's mulch or rock. And the manner in which it was constructed, these are new homes, has now weeds coming through that mulch on your, 2, 3.
South side of Stone Creek and the veranda at, across from Stone
So
Creek Park.
they either
all
use
the same.
low-quality mulch, they
All the
probably
same.
didn't spray, or the maintenance is not working. Anyway, all those neighbors are gonna have a maintenance issue like they probably have not anticipated in dealing with that. And we need to sort of help them and tell them this is what the standard is. Because some of them already, you can sort of see the mulch, but mainly it's just weeds. It's like they now have a green weeds around a couple of trees in the front yard.
Well, you need to freshen the mulch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's standard things, and a lot of people who buy those homes may not even know what to do.
Agreed. Yep.
What they need to do, what the rules are, or how to do it.
And quite frankly, David, it's not just the newer neighborhoods like that. People who have ripped out grass and thrown rock in the front yard, even if it looks nice for the first year, the next spring, all the weeds come up. And nobody warned them that without the appropriate soil preparation or whatever, you're just going to get weeds through the grass, and it's even more difficult to deal with. Or
Right.
through the rocks, sorry.
Yeah, and something that bothers me, I just drive around Rancho, and it seems to be a lot of places, because I go back, and they have their bulk out there in front, and it's there for a week or two, and I think some of the people that are doing that, I'd like to think that they just don't have the education on it, that it's supposed to be 48 hours. It cannot be until the city comes around and finally does it for you, that they have some responsibility to call.
Yes.
And so you need to have a pickup. And that's maybe the education on that, and hand out like you're talking about, David, to have a good program and maybe again, but I'm not sure if it's just someone new and to a well-established home, but they don't know that it's something that they have to do. Maybe they just wait for the city to come and pick it up on their own. No.
I think you're right. I think what we want is the education to promote people being good property owners, good residents, and that fulfills one of our goals. So I feel very confident that we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So in the education outreach, some residents truly need assistance coming into compliance. I know you all hear me when I tell you how my team helped people in the past. I think that we can work on financial incentives to assist eligible residents. And I think the intent, actually, I'm sorry, I missed a slide. Did I miss a slide? No, all right, no, I apologize. So we work with the community engagement to refocus some of the financial incentives to properties that need assistance to achieve compliance. And there are truly people out there that just need a little bit of help. And that might be help from a neighbor or help with a little bit of seed money to get something improved on their property that goes a long way to really, making the neighborhood look good. And then some other operational changes. Recently, we had a discussion about recording enforceable CC&Rs in the new developing areas. The intent is to form future residents of community standards, just like you were talking about, Vice Mayor Sander, to avoid unintended violations through lack of information. And we even thought it was good to do robust education to builders and contractors. Because when you're out looking for a home and you think about what it is I want to do at this home, maybe you think, well, this home is great, but I might want to pave the entire front yard because I have a boat, an RV, and trailer. We want to have people to have the information that they need to make the decision about which house to buy or the right location in which to buy it. So we feel really confident that working again with Maria and her team and having these enforceable CCNRs, which just basically, reaffirm our property maintenance code, that it would be a good idea to work on these throughout our newer neighborhoods.
Carrie, on your slide about community assistant or assisting some residents, that's a huge issue, as you know. I completely understand that. The church service club partnerships that we used to utilize, are those still there in any way?
Some of them will do some help, like the Rancho Cordova Community Partnership will offer a little bit of help here and there. I have had renewed interest through what you were talking about earlier with Garrett and all the local churches, for them to actually come back and embrace some of these programs. So I was super excited when I heard you had that meeting, and a couple of them have reached out to me and asked me to attend one of the next meetings.
I think they just need some semblance of a proposal, a structure. How do we do this?
Yes.
It's intimidating for a group to figure out how do we do this on our own.
Agreed. And a lot of those are their congregations and their community and our friends. And so I'm happy and excited to help with that.
Good.
So now we've gone through what we plan on doing, and I'll be coming back to you with some of those things that I talked about in the future. Here's where I really need to get some policy direction from the council. So we've got 3 areas that I think we need to focus on. So currently, front yard maintenance violations. These yards are out of compliance with our current municipal code because they're overgrown vegetation, and where you've got just the dirt, it's a potential storm drain contamination violation. So I want to clarify that my next slide has nothing to do with these. We would already open cases on these, and we have quite a few cases that look like this, although...
Just to be clear, when the grass is all dead and you've got dirt exposed, and then a rain comes, you wash that dirt into the storm drains.
Yes.
Storm drains drain into the river. That clouds the river. That causes us as the city, the drainage agency, a lot of difficulty because we're now putting
Exactly.
cloudiness into the river that's
Yes, and that...
penalizable by the state.
And that's one of the hardest, that's one of the things I'd really love to work with communications on, because people have a hard time understanding
Yeah.
that. They don't realize that we're sort of the ambassadors of the permit, but they have a responsibility. So yes, absolutely, thank you for pointing that out.
I mean, those are massive fines that the state can
Yes.
levy on someone who's discharging muddy water, basically.
Yes.
And from a, if I may just add, from a legal perspective, one of the difficult things is their self-reporting. So we have mandatory duties to report, and then it's easy to troll the mandatory reports thereafter.
You have to tattle on yourself so the whole world knows.
And that's a big shock.
For you, because you tattled on yourself.
Right.
That's a big shock to a resident when they're in shock when they realize what we could all be dealing with should they not resolve an issue like that. So my next slide is, these are issues, and let me move on to the next one. Here's where I really need some input from you. Regionally, most jurisdictions have concerns with brown lawns. The only one that's actually doing enforcement at this point is the city of Sacramento, and they have pretty generous reimbursement programs. So one of the questions that I have for you that we kind of get from a lot of folks is, we're concerned, even though I know we don't have a drought necessarily this year, there's a lot of people that are very sort of green-minded. Maybe their lawns aren't green, but they're very thoughtful about water waste. And so we see lawns like this one on the top right-hand side where it's very well manicured and landscaped, but there's a brown lawn. I actually wanted to run out today and actually see if this one was still brown. There's still grass there, it's just brown. And so I would really love to hear from the council to what extent you would feel that we should go and enforce on something like this. Again, not the high weeds, not the dirt, but where you've actually got grass and it's just brown and well manicured.
So will that, if the grass doesn't come back in the wet season, it will turn into dirt at some point?
And if
Because the structure of the grass will break down and you'll be to a dirt lawn.
But
Then we'd have a problem.
we might have a problem there. That might be an opportunity for us to do some education and say, at some point, there might be an incentive or We might be able to show them some proposals for drought tolerant. I did drought tolerant 4 years ago. It's been amazing. My yard looks fantastic. I had to bring in some more tan bark this weekend when we had nice weather, but it is really it's really nice. And so I think it's probably, you know, the problem is when you go out there and it's sort of dead but it is manicured and it's not running that dirt off. I mean, it would be nice for staff to have an understanding of what the real expectation is.
So from my perspective, here in this area, we, over decades, it simply has become traditional to expect a green lawn for property values. Many of us come from parts of the country where you had a green lawn in the summertime, and in the wintertime, because of the cold, the lawn died, and the only way people ever had green lawns was if you overseeded with winter rye, and it came up and managed to stay green through the cold. It seems today more people are leaving their lawns unwatered, as David said, simply because they don't want to pay the water bill, as opposed to the fact, I mean, just because they don't want to pay the water bill. I realize water bills can get extremely expensive, and we all know exactly how much we're using nowadays because of the metering. And if you're growing a garden or if you have a lot of landscaping, as we used to have, you pay a lot for the water. But when you own a house, you need to think not only of your own property values, but of the property values of your neighborhood.
A question about the brown lawns are not a violation. With the rain we've had the last few months, I think if there's any brown lawn, it means the lawn is dead and it's not going to come back with rain or anything else. But if a brown lawn is not a violation, then how can you educate someone with that? If, as you said, it's very well maintained, it's not washing off on the gutter or anything like that, what is it you do with that?
So where we say brown lawns are not a violation, it's in some other jurisdictions. They just have nothing in their municipal code about brown lawns. You know, we are supposed to keep vegetation. The timing isn't very, very good because we've had all this rain. I was actually going to have this conversation prior to all this rain, but so right now, technically, people have dead grass. You're supposed to have vegetation in your front yard. The question is, when it's manicured and still there, is it an issue? And the other thing that's kind of tough for staff is, like, how far do we go with doing enforcement on this? And, you know, an administrative citation is $100. The next time around, it would be $200. The next time around, it would be $500. Even if we liened the property at that point, it may still take a while for those liens to actually get to the property owner and make them make a change. So I just want to make sure that I have a good sense of what it is that you really want to see folks working on out there and how much time you want us to be spending on these particular issues.
It's a tough question because the photo you gave us here, that is a well-manicured
Right.
dead lawn. I don't know,
Right.
zoysia grass or something like that, you know, died and still has a lot of substance to it. But a lot of the, you know, more problem properties, they don't have grass, they have weeds. So they don't really mow the weeds in the spring. Maybe they mow them once after it stops raining. The weeds don't grow back so much. So what you really have are dead weeds.
You're absolutely right, David.
Instead of dead grass. So I would say this situation versus the one I just drew for all of us, pretty different.
No, right. And so what we see is the weeds grow quicker than the grass. And so that top left-hand one is probably what you'll see like some minor vegetation on the sort of on the ground, but the weeds grow way quicker than the grass, and so you would see it looking like that. If it got like that, it's definitely an issue, that top left-hand picture.
Well, but isn't that one of the brand-new lawns? Isn't that one of the brand-new neighborhoods where they were not allowed to plant grass, all right? So the
Right.
builder put in all this bark. What David brought up earlier is the situation where a brown lawn like that, in year one, it looks like that, all right? It's grass. By year two, weeds have come up, even if you're mowing it, weeds have come up, and they've begun to crowd out the grass, and then pretty soon, you've got clumps of weed, which never, I mean, they may spread, but the things that spread are not the things you want to
Right,
spread.
right.
Okay, they're fillery and things like that. And then ultimately, what happens is these brown spots, I mean, these dirt spots start appearing between the clumps of weeds, and then ultimately, even the clumps of weeds run out of nourishment, and pretty much you have these huge patches of dirt which are running off into the sidewalk and down the drain where it says, do not, something about, don't harm the fishes. Whatever, the stamp that we put on all the drains. So it's an evolutionary thing. I personally, when David talked about doing a campaign, it's probably going to be more productive to do a campaign on some of these things than to find people who may not, if they can't afford to pay the water bill, they probably can't afford the fine. And there's no point in increasing a fine that people can't pay.
Yeah, I think that's the comment I would give you. I feel like we just spent a lot of time kind of defining what art is in some ways. Like I think you know what the problem is to a certain extent. I think the point is anything that you're doing in this space should be gaining compliance.
Yep.
Whether that's through encouragement or through, whether it's the carrot or the stick, it's getting people to have good-looking lawns that the rest of the neighborhood can be proud of. And so when we look at any of these things, I mean, you know, unless they're bank-owned properties, Carrie, and you know this really well, finding them to the bejesus doesn't do us any good unless you have a bank or somebody behind that that's going to pay it. And the one thing that you can do with fines and liens is you can actually disincentivize compliance. Because if it's going to cost me this much to get out of compliance, well, then screw it. Just keep fining me. I'll just never pay it. Because the only time that we get paid is when you sell the property. And if you put so many fines on there to where you make it cost prohibitive to ever do that, then we just have people that don't care. And so I think whether it's some sort of educational initiative, I know, you know, Habitat for Humanity has submitted a Measure H application similar to what we've been doing with Rebuilding Together. And we know we're not getting to every home with Rebuilding Together. Refining and perfecting what we do when we work with Rebuilding Together or Habitat or Sierra Service Project to make sure that when we put in things, to David, to your point, you know, whether that's making sure our builders understand how, you know, put down weed barrier before you put bark down, novel concept. But, you know, in the second and third year of a bark yard, you shouldn't have weeds coming up. I have weeds coming up where there's bark because nobody ever put weed barrier down 14 years ago when they built the house. So again, whatever these things are, it's not about how draconian and mean can we be, because ultimately if finding them is not getting us what we need, then what's the point? You know, whether it's $100 or $500. And again, I've shared this story with Cyrus. A great example of what we're dealing with here was, I remember the last campaign cycle, and I was walking precincts on Lincoln Village Boulevard, and went up to a house where a lady had her really nice sign that I think you gave her when you were mayor, saying that she had the nicest yard in the neighborhood. And I said hi to her and talked to her for a few minutes and complimented her on her yard. And I go to the next house, and it's a lady who, to your point, everything's dead, wasn't being taken care of very well. She answers the door using her walker to get to the door, and she was so embarrassed that I was standing on her doorstep because her yard looked so bad. And then she told me that she'd been saving up for 3 years to fix her yard, and her brother died, and she had to pay for the funeral. And that's where all of her money went that she had planned to hire the same guy that had done the neighbor's yard next door. When she fixed up her yard, she was going to hire the same guy, and her brother died. So behind a lot of these stories are things that we need to be really sensitive to. In that instance, you know, I referred her to code enforcement, and I don't know if we ended up doing her yard at some point. But those are the kinds of stories that we want to figure out. And again, just going out there and saying, oh, you didn't cut your grass. But if we figure out what's the motivating factor behind that, and, you know, Ryan and Carrie and the rest of you guys, you've done a great job in finding those opportunities where we can bring volunteers in and address this. But, you know, again, I know there's some people that get really fired up about this subject, and, you know, but again, just walking out there and giving them a ticket or a fine isn't necessarily what's going to get us what we want, which is compliance.
I think I appreciate the input from everyone, and I think it's a fine balance. I think doing a campaign would be fabulous. If we could come up with some recommendations of how to do a fairly simplistic program, lawns, drought tolerant. And then I think you're right, because the other thing is we do like to be able to look at people on a case-by-case basis. When we lien a property, those liens come due when someone's property taxes come due the next time.
That's right.
And so we want to make sure we're not putting someone in harm of losing a house.
We take every lien that we put on a property and put it on the tax rolls the following year?
No, there's special assessment. No. There are
Okay.
some that are special assessment, though, that do come due with the next cycle.
That usually takes a vote of us, but you can lean in between there.
But we bring them to you. We
Right.
do bring those to you. And so I'm just saying, we like to
We don't
be-
do that 100% of the time. I just wanna
No. And you'll know when those are. But we like to be very mindful about when we do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like what Vice Mayor Sanders said about doing a campaign. I feel like if we then have to go into enforcement mode, it's kind of like you have to be under a rock not to know what's going on, right? And what we need to do to move forward. So I appreciate the feedback on that. I'd like to just,
And Carrie and Donald, I think you just made this point. I'll just state it a little differently. Like we just talked about with duplex inspections or the rental property inspections, there are good guys and bad guys. And what we try to do always, I think, at the city is not penalize the good guys.
correct.
But if someone's causing a problem, that makes them the bad guy, then they're gonna have to, pay their way out of that problem somehow. They've got to bear the burden of the problem they're creating. And so in this case, I mean, gets to be pretty difficult sometimes, I think, to decide, is this a good guy or a bad guy I'm dealing with? But in the case you just outlined of the lady who wants to fix up her lawn and can't, that's a good guy. That ends up on the we need to find a way to help list. The homeowner who says, I don't feel like mowing my lawn, it's too much work. I don't want to pay for water, I don't want to pay to fix it. I'm just gonna let the weeds grow up 3 feet, and when someone comes by to complain, I'll mow it once and they'll die. And I won't have to do it again this year, because, it's out of the rainy season now. That's not the good guy.
Right.
They're using the rules to try to evade, and they're damaging their neighborhood in the
Right.
process. So that's where you have to discriminate.
Yes.
You get one side of, what we can do, and you get the other side of what we can do.
Maybe there's a middle ground too, like Councilmember Terry said, but if someone has an issue, but we are willing to work with them on
Yep.
what we do with
A lot of gray here.
like in future, maybe we can work for next year for you to get that.
And it makes your job really hard. But we appreciate, the approach you've taken over the years to it.
But you know what? We know that you care, and that's why I have these conversations with you, because we care, and we also care about those folks that do the right thing with their properties, and it's finding the balance. So thank you.
Well, I know that you're trying that's a campaign to educate and to help. And if you have someone like he's talking about, they need some help. And that's different than someone who has their weeds in the backyard or whatever. It's all 6, feet tall, because some of the grass does that. And it's a fire hazard when they go dead, because, anything that could really start a spark on that would be more than just code enforcement. We're talking about violations for the fire department too, because it's, when people start really don't care, then there are other things that they violate besides just what we have here. You're
Yes.
threatening their safety and their community's safety, also their neighborhoods, you know. So there are some things that they need to be pointed out to also. This is a fire department violation, and not just the city saying this. You know, we have other things that you have to think about.
Yes, yes. And just to let you know, we take fire hazards very seriously. We've already kicked off this year's weed control program, just for those of you. Thank you. Well, I just want to move now to excessive paving. Just to clarify for folks that maybe are watching this tonight, that you are allowed to have no more than 40% coverage of impervious surface in the front of your property. Now, all these are out of compliance. Most of these are probably, could potentially be pre-cityhood, and so we'd have to look at when they were paved. In addition, in 2017, the council approved a required 5-foot buffer from property line to property line, so that we make sure that we don't have just like, for want of a better word, a sea of parking area. Obviously, if we see someone actively preparing to pour a new driveway extension, we will take action on them immediately and tell them that that can't be done. And if they continue to do it, I have no problem with telling them they need to jackhammer it out once they've been told if they continue to move on and pave. Going back to the enforceable CCNRs, we did a review, a windshield view review of Cavallo Ranch, and as you can see here, of 615 homes we looked at, about 23% of them had excessive paving. Some of the contributors to that were lack of education to future residents and contractors, which I think is what we talked about we'd like to do moving forward. And also the approved configuration of some of those properties. At one point in time, some of the 3-car garage homes were approved with Hollywood strips versus a driveway, and we're going to work very closely, and I know that that won't happen with planning in the future. That was historic. And so what we'd like to talk to now is about have a city discussion with City Council on existing excessive pavements. And before we ask you to give you your thoughts about that, I just want to talk to you about something that we have in our property maintenance code, which we haven't used yet, and it's called a notice of non-compliance. And what this means is if somebody has something that's not a health and safety issue, it could be used for excessive paving. Obviously not a whole front yard excessively paved, but if, and what we could do is actually record a notice of non-compliance against the property with the property owner's knowledge, and it means that they wouldn't be able to refinance or sell the property without coming into compliance. This could be used for other things too, like if you had a fence that maybe was, you could see through the fence, it was a wrought iron fence, but maybe it was a foot too close to the sidewalk, but it didn't block view. These are the types of things that we're thinking we could use a notice of non-compliance. So I'd like to take a few moments and have the council think about and give me their feedback on the existing excessive pavements, and also how we might implement, or if you feel okay with us implementing the notice of non-compliance.
Well, I worked so hard on this in the first few years, and got zero cooperation from the people who were doing code enforcement at the time. As people moved into brand-new houses in Stone Creek and started pouring more concrete, even though Elliott had given us very generous driveways, and there's still a house with an entire front yard that's concrete because they managed to tell the code enforcement person that they were allergic to grass, aside from the fact that there's grass on both sides of them, okay? And then there's two-story houses on another street that did exactly what we would not permit now, which was to pave one driveway to here and one driveway to here, and, oh, great, you got about 100 feet worth of linear feet worth of driveway right in the front of these 2 yards. It drives me bananas, and I have been unpopular in the neighborhood for doing that. But at this point, people who have done it may not even live in that house anymore.
Right.
I like the idea personally of a notice of noncompliance. It's just kind of like putting everybody on notice that this is not the way the house was built and they're not in compliance with what the current codes say or any codes have ever said. It doesn't seem though, it seems as though we need to be careful of, as you said, the effect on the property owner when they try to refinance or go to sell.
And I definitely think that we would be doing research as we did this through probably starting out with an education campaign, and then we'd have to look at what was approved. You know, we might have some, say, in Sun River that have have excessive paving, but maybe they did it when it was in the county. We'd have to do a lot of research, but I do feel like, you know, educating folks. I think some people, like if somebody came to me and I had inherited something, I would want to know, because I would probably not want to be in non-compliance. I would probably want to be able to plan between now and when maybe I want to refinance or when I want to sell, when I can best move on dealing with the issue.
Yeah. The thing is, these things are so labor intensive, Carrie, and what we've talked about is how much time does your staff spend actually on the streets enforcing or looking out for issues versus paperwork time? And do you find another whole person to just sit around and do nothing but look up when houses were built or when, because there's no way to tell when the concrete was poured. It also applies in Stone Creek, it applies to people whose automobile, RV, boat, whatever is behind their fence, but then is visible above their fence, which is also in violation of CC&Rs that we all, as new homeowners, signed. It's like, where do you stop?
Right. And there are a lot of issues that we know we need to focus on. And so we were looking for another way to at least be able to make sure people understood we weren't just saying, no, we're not going to address it at all.
You might be able to figure out when it was poured based on Google map imagery and
You
similar
can-
imagery. 'Cause you
absolutely.
can now access, 10-year,
Do
12-year,
that, yes.
15-year-old stuff and look.
You
It
can.
might tell you, it might not.
You can. It's just, here again, it's a matter of, it's being labor intensive.
So
And
Linda-
what's most productive?
The notice of noncompliance, I can remember a long time ago, I was talking about, is there something we could do in a situation like that, where a house has a serious noncompliant issue, to say, as long as you live there, it's fine, but as soon as that title transfers, property transfers, this has to be taken care of? Is there any mechanism that would allow that? Because that would get the current owner off of the crisis point, but when they transferred it, you'd have to fix the problem.
I think this would be the nearest thing, Vice Mayor Sander, that we would have. We could work with folks, I imagine, if they're refinancing, but this is the thing that literally tells them on their title they need to resolve it. And we're not going to be doing this, I wasn't planning on going proactive, but reactively if we got a complaint about one. And we would absolutely do it completely transparently by telling the property owner that we plan on doing it and seeing if they wanted to cure the issue. Yeah.
This might be a city attorney question also.
I think we agree with this technique. One other thing that we haven't ever done is started to amortize out certain legal non-conforming uses. We've discussed in other settings that, when somebody makes an investment in a piece of property or in compliance with then existing zoning laws, they are legal non-conforming. There is a process that you can identify a reasonable period in which you could be expected to recover that investment. And then at the end of that, potentially, at the end of that amortization, the ladder of the amortization period or the time they sell. So that's a potential tool that might possibly fit with this notice of compliance idea. But that's something we've never done because the council has been relatively permissive about that issue of forcing somebody to conform with new laws.
Well, in the 40% case, I don't know if it's new. I think that's pretty old as a regulation. As a matter of fact, Linda, I think the county has some bones of that in their original code.
They do.
Yeah. So I think that we inherited that from day one in that case.
I think the only thing that we just need to ease into this with some, a note of caution, I guess. You know, David, I think one of your mantras since I've been here is property value increases. Depending on how you apply this, could have very detrimental impacts on property values and resale values within the city. So, I mean, if you're talking about, I don't even know how many homes we would have. I mean, to me, that this goes along the same lines of boats and RVs and trailers. Like, how many are out there? How many are really a problem? And what are the remedies to fix them? Because, I mean, concrete, I mean, 10,000 roughly on the low end to remove all of it and put a new landscaping back in. You know, that's a huge issue if you're talking that's over 500 homes. I mean, you're potentially talking millions of dollars of lost value. So I think we just need to be extremely careful about it because it's doing two things. One, it's a cost if you want to go sell your home. It's also a cost if you want to refinance your home to bring it back into compliance, or it's homes that are just staying off of the market for whatever reason. And let's say there's another issue when it comes to a recession or something else like that, and if you have people that are trying to sell their homes to stay afloat financially and other things like that, and this is something that's put in front of them. So I don't want to say no to this, but I have serious reservations and would want to talk a lot more about the application, the number of units, and what the average cost would be to come into compliance for some of the items that we're talking about, especially the concrete. I think you put a fence up you shouldn't have. You installed hedges that are blocking view, things. That's completely different in my mind comparatively to the concrete. To me, is I think the biggest issue. And while I do think it is a problem, for those of them that may have been there for 5 or 10 years, or there has been a resale, or there are things like that, like how are we going to approach that from a policy standpoint and an implementation standpoint? I'd want to see that before you start doing these.
Absolutely, and I don't want, I kind of want to have these conversations because every now and again, these issues come back up. And I don't want to make anyone at home think we're running out tomorrow and that's what we're focusing on. It's just looking at these issues that kind of have a theme. The good news is, I think with enforceable CC&Rs, with the campaign that we plan on working, we don't think that we're going to be seeing it in our new neighborhoods. I think we're going to see a lot of positiveness in our new neighborhoods from the minute someone walks into the sales office to the end of the sale and moving forward. And then with our campaigns that we're going to work on, we feel like we can get the education out. And hopefully as people think about what is it I'm going to do to my front yard and they see they've got an issue, maybe they'll think about self.
And I'm wondering even too, like proactive for the newer neighborhoods too, but just for concrete contractors in general, if there's a way through Region Builders, which is now Region Business or something else, in talking to the folks that may do this work around the fact that, I don't know if there's any way to create liability that, you know, if a company installs this and didn't get a permit and didn't ask for permission, what kind of liability can the homeowner have against the contractor that installed something that they shouldn't have? And I don't know what, from a city standpoint, we can do to remedy that.
Well, you don't need a permit to pour concrete.
No.
Oh, that's right.
But it's like
brought that up
when
last time.
building department used to go out and sit at Home Depot and tell everybody who was buying a new hot water heater that they needed a permit to remove the old one and install the new one. Yeah. So there are educational opportunities out there. It strikes me that this is something that is motivated by two things. And at the risk of sounding like the police department, it's people should be parking in their garages instead of on the street or in the driveways. They'd be a lot less subject to theft and vandalism, number one. Number two, the vast majority of everybody is storing half of what they own in their garage, and so they don't have a room to park in the driveway. But number three, if you own a house with 4 or 5 or 6 bedrooms, and you have 4 or 5 or 6 drivers in your household, you don't have room.
Right.
Everybody has to have, code requires 2 spaces in the garage and 2 spaces on the driveway, unless it's something with a special development permit, like townhouses in Cat Village, that kind of thing, you know. But not everybody has enough space in their garage for the number of people that live in the number of bedrooms they have in their house, and therefore they pour more concrete so they can add more parking spaces.
I just had a young adult child move out. I've only got one driver other than my husband and I at the house now, so I can empathize with that conversation. Were there any more comments, questions around?
Through the mayor, if I may. One analogy to kind of compare the notice of compliance issue and conversation for an individual property and its potential impact on the transferability of a piece of property might be to compare it briefly to a large-scale subdivision where for all of our development agreements, which we have on all of our large-scale subdivisions, there's a statutory right to get a notice of compliance, essentially a certificate that says before they try to sell the piece of property that they are in full compliance with the terms of their development agreement, that there's no violations under city law. And that's built into the structure of law precisely because they think that sort of ability to show clean title can be a necessary prerequisite to their ability to even want to engage in trying to sell the property or transact it. So it's a different level, obviously. It's at a commercial transactional level, but I think it does go to Mr. Terry's point that there are at least some places in California law where the legislature's intervened and said you need to be able to get a warranty that there isn't a compliance issue, and that precisely because it can be so material to the marketability or transferability of property.
Yep.
So an interesting topic. I would like to talk about it a lot more, making that clear that this doesn't end up in some code update at some point really soon, and that we are going to talk about it again. But it is a problem, and I'd like to find a solution.
Thank you. For my last topic that I would like to have a discussion about, which I know a lot of people are very passionate about, is garbage can screening. I just wanted to put this slide up here to just kind of reaffirm that trash receptacles shall be screened from public view 12 hours before and after scheduled pickup. Currently, you're able to do it with some kind of enclosure. Here's just a couple that we saw around town as we were driving around. That being said, I think this is a discussion that probably will go like the one that we had a little bit earlier about the extenuating circumstances. We had a phone call today from a senior citizen, actually, that actually was emailed to Cyrus, myself, and Elizabeth about she is unable to pull her green waste can up. We work very closely with Steve Harriman and with our garbage hauler that if there is a senior or disabled person, they will get out and pull the can down, empty the can, and move it back up. We've also heard from some of our seniors that their concern is that even though it should be behind a fence, they're home, they're alone, and they're worried about having their side yard fence unlocked, even for someone to go back there and pull it out. And so we wanted to kind of get some general feedback on what you think about enclosures, whether you're okay with these, currently are allowed, whether it would be okay to continue allowing folks to do this if they did it sort of so it tied in with the current fences that they have out there. But we do definitely get a lot of calls and concerns from folks that either because they're physically unable to move their can behind the fence, or that the way that their property is set up, that they just don't have the ability to pull the can out, given where the side yard fence is and that type of thing. And so I want to open it up again for a little bit of discussion to get feedback on what the city council feels about this.
I think you're back to what David or Donald suggested earlier about the lady who was saving money for 3 years and was going to do the lawn and then had to pay for her brother's heart attack or something like that. And then what you just said about the senior citizen who is really concerned about having the gate unlocked, because there are a lot of things on the news, not necessarily Rancho Cordova, but on occasion Rancho Cordova, people are broken into the house, whether someone's there or not. So that kind of puts a big question mark on, okay, how do you do that? If the garbage can is there, you can bring it down and help them do that, and then bring it back up again, but you can bring it back up to the garage or alongside or something, but it's still going to be out there in front because either the gate isn't big enough to get them in because they have a very narrow property line, or the gate's locked. You know, they're question mark, question mark.
And I'd like to just throw out one thing that I didn't mention was in the city of Sacramento, they've recently made some changes to the way they implement their code with regards to garbage cans, and they use the word substantially. So if someone has very robust bushes that they can tuck their can behind, as long as, for the most part, you can't see much of it. So they really do have sort of a substantial compliance about, you know, I mean, it's definitely something else we could look at.
I was driving through a neighborhood in Sacramento about 2 weeks ago, and I was struck by the fact that there are no garbage cans visible. This wasn't a particularly wealthy neighborhood, just sort of run-of-the-mill neighborhood. I was looking for a shortcut, and I was like, wow, there are no trash cans here. When I drive through the new neighborhood north of Douglas, that same one I was telling you about, the mulch with weeds growing through, maybe 20% of the houses have their garbage cans sitting out in front of the garage door or by the side of the house, even though I think all of them have paved access around the side. But it's just become the habit, right? New owner decides they don't want to really wrestle them through the fence, so we'll just leave them sit out front. And the question is whether that's acceptable or not.
I hear another campaign.
You beat me to it.
You know what might be interesting too, and again, we've seemed in the last few years since we've discovered Rebuilding Together and some of these other folks that adding more things to their projects, but maybe that, again, or maybe that's a Boy Scout project for, and I get for the seniors and disabled, we'll try to help them, but for the ones that are concerned about having that gate open, maybe there's a way to create a list of projects that we can fund at some point, and for not too much money to actually hide some of the ones that are, I can't imagine there's that many of them that we run into that, but where we do, you can't imagine that's that expensive to say, I don't know, here's half the money for it or something, or find some volunteer labor to put it in. I mean, if we're paying Sierra Service Project to rip out fences, you can imagine they could build a few too.
There's other public facilities with this kind of problem where many people need access to it, but you want it to be secure. So the Knox locks concept, fire departments use. It's like the key that gets you in the gated neighborhood, or the key that opens the gate on the American River Parkway, or opens the gate behind the school.
Well, I mean,
those
if
sorts
you
of
think
things.
about it, I mean, I used to manage 2 big commercial buildings in Sacramento that were being picked up by Republic Services. They had combination locks on them. So the hauler knew what the combination was, and I did.
They knew the lock.
Yeah, we locked all of our trash. I mean, it's Oak Park. You lock your trash enclosure, you'll have residents in there.
That might be an option right there. I didn't realize they'd go that specific, but
Yeah,
that might be
maybe
an option.
maybe we
worth
just come
pursuing.
up with a, and working with Republic Services to put combination padlocks that they can access in
They
some
can use
way.
themselves or the trash hauler.
Yeah, I mean, you would just have to put a lock on the front of the gate, which that's not normally where you put one on a residential. You put it behind it in the backyard to get to it. But maybe there's a way to do something along those lines.
That's possible. I still would like to get feedback as to whether we're okay with these types of concepts. And I was thinking,
I think these, and I guess I didn't say it that way. Yes, I think screens like that are just fine so long as they look along these lines and that you're working with the homeowner to make sure that they meet a certain standard. And again, I think these are really great projects, either for, Eagle Scout projects or for rebuilding together or for Sierra Service project or somebody to do this for the handful that we might have that this is an issue.
And I think also.
And that is not go out to Cavala Ranch and build 50 of these. We're talking about the people that have been living in Sun River for 30 years that can't physically do it, and
Yeah,
we can't figure out a locking mechanism or something else. I think,
I
these are
agree.
fine.
I agree.
Okay,
Just to clarify, as far as the kind of using Republic Services or others, there's a cost associated with some of those things that operationally, is an impact either to folks who are actually doing the service, unlocking gates, and I'm sure there are different commercial rates, for trash service and residential, and so remember, these things are cost some funds too along the way, so there is an operating cost.
But to that point, Micah, that if we're talking about that, we've got this many people that we're actually going in their backyard and getting it. I mean, we're talking about the ones that can't do it, that don't want to leave their gate unlocked, right? I mean, we're shrinking every time. So we would assume that this is a very small amount of people that need a screen or that need that service.
It's also something you could lean on the church groups for.
Mhm.
They'd be happy to build that kind of thing and actually team up with you if you gave them what you're actually looking for.
I was actually going to say, Mr. Taylor's still here, I think, Ryan. We could ask you and Russell to come up with some plans and maybe bring those forward for folks to look at.
Plus, a lot of these elderly individuals tend to be part of some pretty big congregations in
Yes.
the region. So I know the congregations would be happy to help out and volunteer. Plus, they think they're helping out the city at the same time. So it's a double win for us, and it doesn't even cost any money. But there's no reason why we can't use those types of groups.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. Well, I'm done with my tough questions for tonight. Are there any additional thoughts, other things that you have comments about?
You're doing an amazing job throughout the city. My big thing is smart code enforcement. So as you're doing this, a lot of the idea is just, putting intelligence behind your ideas. If you need whips and chains and stuff like that, or carrots and stuff, just smart about it. So, when it comes to the business side, we know that grass is growing. We are not going to shoot out a bunch of letters saying that your grass is too tall, knowing that they can't get the equipment on to cut the grass.
No.
Smart code enforcement, and that's what we need to do beyond. The other thing is as you get ready to put your budget together and as we make decisions, I know David has his interest in me as well, as making sure you have your properly staffed to be able to make the most advantage. We were looking at it, I think it was you and some others. I mean, the hard risk ones, you almost need someone or need some person to do the hard negotiations. If we've been having some horrible area where they've had I forgot what we had, Angel. It was a ugly looking, I think it was someone's boat that's been there for 20 years and it's rotting. I mean, literally it costs about probably $1,000 to put it on a trailer. And I need someone to go around and take the 200 ultra blighted area, because honestly, another ticket is not going to do anything to help you at all. Like, they don't care. They never will care. But the residents there that have been there for the last 20 years do care. So it's that next step to be able to just be the hard knocks. And I bet if we started taking a bite of that every year, we could get rid of the habitual people, because most people want to be good neighbors, especially in our city. We love our city. We don't want to have blighted areas of that, but there is some just people that just are not going to take those steps. So I want to see something, as you're doing this, something along the lines of like your top negotiator that goes in and be like, look, what's it going to take to get rid of this thing? Because I'm tired of seeing this thing slowly dissolve in the middle of one of our nicer neighborhoods.
No, agreed. And just to let you know, there are some properties out there like that I think through open data we'll be able to share more, that do take a long time, because we're working with Frank Splendorio for the city attorney's office on some of those really hard cases. So I do appreciate that, but I think having an ability to give more timely feedback to residents so that they actually know we're working on those cases versus it seems like we haven't been focusing on them.
Is that going to be in our new software?
It absolutely is. I'm so excited about our new
That's cool.
software. Yes.
I'm going to ask our city clerk if there are any speaker cards for this item.
I do not have any, but I see one coming.
I know I'm new here. I should have turned this on a while ago.
Angel Ball.
Good evening. I really don't have anything prepared. I want to just kind of talk from my heart on some of these issues. When it comes to lawns and landscapes, I think you should just decide what it's supposed to look like, whatever that is, rocks, gravel, bark, and do like a drop dead date to where everyone that doesn't have landscaping would have landscaping. So let's just say we have a vision in 2020 that everybody has landscape. And then maybe do a how-to. So the person that's looking online for how to redo my landscaping, maybe they have an idea that it's $1,000 or $2,000 to do it. And we have people, we have businesses, Lowe's, Home Depot, Soilborn. We should have classes. I went to, of all things, a composting class with these little red worms that eat your food and turn it into dirt. And they had more people there than they had bins and worms. So I think people would come, especially during the springtime. I want to know what we're going to do with the green dots, because we didn't really talk about what this graph represents. And, oh, I know you guys are going to probably faint, but I do believe that there are people that can't put their garbage cans away. And I do believe that there are solutions for these folks. And I think some of the pictures that you showed were very nice. I also believe that there are some plastic guards that are maybe $100. And I say guards, I don't mean guards, but they poke in the ground and then you put your cans behind them. So I think that's a fairly decent solution. I think that's it. I just kind of wanted to know how this graph played, and I'm good. Thank you.
Angel, could you clarify? You referenced green dots, and we are.
Remember the priorities?
Oh, you mean from a previous meeting?
Yeah, from the January.
Sorry. Now I get
From the
it.
January meeting.
I'm frantically looking through a map,
I know,
looking
we're
for a
all
map
sitting here
with
looking
green
for green
dots. I'm like, I
dots.
don't remember anything like that.
So
Okay.
I guess my real thing is, and I think I know the answer, but I don't want to assume anything, is you didn't talk about junk and rubbish because you already have a plan. You didn't talk about inoperable vehicles because you already have a plan. And you wanted input for landscaping and cans and exterior maintenance because you didn't know what direction. And
Correct, and actually, I appreciate you asking for that clarification. What we took away from that is that people are very passionate. There are things that they really want us to focus on. So what we're trying to do is do a much more comprehensive program that includes the education and the incentives, but also we can adjust and reduce some of the programs that we know that we've done a great job on, rental housing being one of them, to give us more personnel to focus on community nuisance. In addition, hire contract staff, which we've been approved to do, to work on like the weed control. They'll be under our overview, and we'll be having people that are very well trained, but have them deal with the lower level violations so that we can actually be out in the neighborhoods working with the community and with education and outreach and community engagement to get some of these issues done. So we heard what you said, and we want to put more people out there, and adjusting what we're doing will allow us to do that, Angel.
And I sense that in this
Yes, I appreciate it.
presentation that, you know, some of these other things that can be done by other folks and get more code enforcement officers out in the
Yes.
neighborhoods.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another speaker card for this item. That's Court. Do you want to come back up?
Members of the council, my name's Court Stratford. About half of you already know me from years past.
This is the voice of a band in the 4th of July from 20 years ago, and
Yeah, before the
about
city was ever
12
a
years
city.
ago, yep.
Yeah, we were out there raising money for the 4th of July every year. Anyway, beyond that, going to the talking about the roads, the infrastructure, I have to put my support behind this lady right now because everything you're talking about is great, okay? Everybody should have a perfect yard and all that, and that's great. The problem is the city is falling down on its part of taking care of my road in front of my house. I realize they can't stop the people from blowing through the stop sign all day, you know, but the road itself, does anybody here have a real idea of how much surface area has to be maintained by this city? Anybody?
We have that information. It's significant.
Okay, so it's
a
square
big,
miles.
It's a big number.
Let's just, yeah. Okay, so do you know how long asphalt lasts, what the life of asphalt is considered to last? You know, it seems like a really important concept when you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that will have to spend to redo our roads over what period of time? If you don't even have an idea now, you have no idea what it's going to cost. $3 million, $6 million for the baseball diamonds is nothing, because the more the roads deteriorate, the more they deteriorate. I don't know if you're familiar with asphalt. I am very familiar with it. I have seen it. If the ground underneath is not prepped by about a foot down, that ground will eventually get soft, the asphalt cracks, the water gets down. Of course, we're not addressing where the water that goes down in the road goes to, into the drainage system somewhere. Doesn't make sense to me either, because I've never seen any yards that have big mud flowing out into the street, except mine. May have had a problem. Anyway, guys, I know everybody's got an important job to do, but that infrastructure, even in our whole country, is a problem. Things are falling apart. You can't ignore them. There's a guy that makes a lot of money in a little white truck that says MCE about twice a week. Gets out. Anybody else see him? Yeah. He also takes a picture. So I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of pictures you might have of holes. Anyway, thank you all so much. Thanks for listening to me. And I'd like to compliment the code enforcement guys there.
Thank you.
We have another speaker card. Tara?
Hi, I'm Tara Kolvenbach, and I live in Rancho Cordova. And I just want to support all that code enforcement is trying to do. I mean, they help us in Whisker Warriors. I know they're trying to do a great job. I feel like I have to defend the people of Rancho Cordova in a sense, because I think we've gotten confusing direction from everyone of what to do with our lawns. And I've seen a lot of people rip up their lawns and put in something atrocious. And so I really support the gal that was talking before, that maybe we need a group of artists or landscape architects or something to give people some direction on what to do with their lawn. It would help, because I think people want to do the right thing, but they don't really know what to do. And I think people have thought, I think like the county or whatever, that they could have nothing in their lawn and that was okay, that they could just have dirt. I just don't think there was enough education. Not saying we didn't do a good job in the city, I just think that people are just really confused, especially with the drought. And the one thing that I think we need to do, though, is if they do have dirt only, to make them right away put what they do with contractors, put those thingies, those that prevent the, you know what I'm talking
The
about.
leak barrier things.
What they put in by the drains and right at the edge of the property.
Waddles.
Do you guys do that? I don't know.
We don't, but you're talking about the waddles where they put
The
them.
waddles, yeah, waddles. And put those right away there, and that would be required. Because that is a real danger to our city, in my mind, if we have mud going into the rivers. So that's just my 2 cents. So, thank you.
Cyrus, can I ask a question? This isn't exactly a subject for a future meeting, but David and I have talked for years about what's commonly called a pattern book. And it's generally thought of as being typical ways in which you could easily and simply remodel an older house. But, and then you and I took a couple of drives around one time to look at people who had really lovely, well-maintained substitute landscaping. And that was probably, that could even have been 2008. I mean, it was that long ago. But I'm wondering if you all could talk about doing something like that people could easily access and do, just, even if we just start with lawns at this point, because that's the real need, and then we would branch off into basic home remodels. You live in this group of Larchmont houses from 1965, and these are some of the things that architects think are easy to do to the house, that sort of thing.
Garland, Texas has an idea book. West Valley City in
Utah.
near Salt Lake City, Utah
Yeah.
has an idea book as well.
Yeah.
That's based on that.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this
Sarah
is.
said, if you think, go ahead,
Yeah,
Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually a great comment. Just wanted to say a few things in closing related to the work that code enforcement, Carrie and her team are doing. This is the approach that we've taken. This is a very complex problem, and it does require a very sophisticated and complex response. And what we have been and what our team have been focusing on is developing a very robust program that it's multidimensional, and it has many different facets, from education, like Kerry pointed out, from education to enforcement to incentives. And our work is to, as we go through the budget discussions, we have already implemented some changes, and we will continue implementing some additional changes to have more resources available to do the work that we need to be doing. And as part of this work is also some resource and some information that we will make available to our residents. A good example is the Good Neighbor Guide that our team worked together, and we have Good Neighbor Guide version 2 coming out that is more expansive. And over time, we will also develop the idea book that you've pointed out. Just the point of this discussion is that we held a community meeting. We held the concerns from the residents. We are taking action. We're taking the comments that we received from the city council, and we're turning that into a very mature and robust program. The change is not going to happen overnight, but it's also has many different facets that we need to take into account. So that's more to come on this. Our program has evolved over time, and it will continue evolving and possibly even being changed over time as we move forward. So thank you, Carrie, and thank you, team, for doing a great job. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Great job,
Thank you,
Kerry.
Linda. I'm going to roll call on that one. Going to item 16.3, ask the city clerk to announce the subject.
The subject is appointment of real property negotiators, Cyrus Abhar, city manager, and Albert Stricker, public works director, property 069-0120-008-11541 Folsom Boulevard.
Okay, I'm going to ask the city attorney to lead this item, please.
Sure, thank you very much, Mayor. These are, the next two items are standard items that are simply prerequisites before the council starts any closed session negotiations with property negotiators on new pieces of property that the city is going to be asked to consider looking at. And all these next two items do is identify the individuals who would be going into closed session with you and assisting you with these two matters.
Move approval?
Okay, but there's two parcel numbers listed, and you only talked about one address.
Yes, we did. The first one, they are two separate items on two totally separate transactions.
You're talking about 16.3 and 16.4? Yeah.
No. On 16.3, there are two parcel numbers listed. 0690120-008 and 072-231-014.
That's accurate statement.
I'm s-
Yes, that is right.
But they both have the same address?
Let's make sure.
Councilmember Budge, I believe you have the draft that you had asked me for a copy of on Friday and not
Yes.
the actual final agenda. It's
Okey
probably what is in
dokey.
front of you.
Got it. So it's one
Okay.
parcel number.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move approval.
Second.
already beat you to that.
Okay, whatever.
Okay.
Call the question.
So
Garrett seconded it.
Okay, sorry. Who was the motion?
Dave.
Thank you. Okay, so I have Councilmember Terry. Aye. Councilmember Budge.
Yes.
Councilmember Gatewood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sander. Mayor McGarvey.
Aye.
Thank
you. And
If I may
ask our city clerk to announce the subject 16.4, please.
He moved both. That's what I thought I was voting on.
Well, but 16.4 didn't get read into the record.
Move approval.
Second.
It still didn't get read into the record.
Doesn't have to.
I will read it. So appointment of real property negotiators, Cyrus Zabhar, City Manager, and Micah Renner, Deputy City Manager, Property City Hall, 2729 Prospect Park Drive, Rancho Cordova, California, Suite 117.
And it is here to call the city attorney to lead the item again.
Thank you again. Same topic. This is just a prerequisite to going into closed session to talk about a piece of leased property in City Hall.
Thank you.
Right. So we have a motion and a second.
Right.
Roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Budge.
Yes.
Councilmember Terry.
Aye.
Councilmember Gatewood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sander. Mayor McGarvey.
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we have any requests for future agenda items?
No, but I have a request to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Charlene Catherine Rhodes Hunt, who many people know from the school district. She worked for Folsom Cordova. She was an incredibly diverse, we hear people talk about Renaissance people. She was an amazingly talented and diverse woman, and I think most of us just knew her in her work with homeless kids at Folsom Cordova. She was the person who they worked with for Project 680, and she passed away. And I would like to adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Linda. We will adjourn in her memory, and thank you for that. We're going to close the regular session and go to a closed session with the community room.